Chapter 546. To the Holy Netherguard. Yu is not only their last hope, but also the incarnation of their future and hope. And most of the time, the endless life of a prisoner was far more despairing than death itself. So even at this moment, they still forced themselves to hold onto their final hope. They prayed again and again in their hearts, hoping that a miracle would arrive, even if their minds were drowned in despair. In the midst of this despair and anticipation, within the road of sea burial, Yu finally made his move. He lifted a hand and slapped the air. His hand seemed to fall upon an invisible zither string, causing musical notes to erupt in all directions, shaking the raging sea and tearing it into countless pieces. The white threads that extended outwards were like a giant spiderweb. With Yu as the center, they swept out in all directions, avoiding Hailan, Tuba, and Tutu. All of the sea monster beasts that were covered by the net of white threads cried out in pain. Countless terrifying crisscrossing wounds appeared on their bodies. Blood gushed out and dyed the net red. The monster beasts' eyes that had turned red because they had fallen into a frenzy suddenly became even more horrifying. They didn't feel fear because of their injuries. Rather, the greatest cruelty in their hearts was aroused. Their eyes stubbornly glared at Yu, as if they wanted to tear apart the person who had hurt them. Unfortunately, these monster beasts didn't obtain the chance to take revenge. The incomparably painful wounds on their bodies suddenly emitted a numbing feeling. Then, the bright red flesh and blood rapidly turned dark gray, like dried meat that had been left hanging for days. Their powerful bodies gradually became sluggish and stiff. The blood-red color and brutality in their eyes gradually solidified. Yu stood deep in the sea. Besides the sound of tumbling seawater, everything around him fell silent. Countless powerful sea monster beasts struggled to sink to the seabed. Yu's expression was calm, as if the person who had casually slapped his hand and sent these monster beasts to hell wasn't him. But it was this calm and incomparably tyrannical contrast that caused one's mind to shake. Then, in this shock, all rose up from the depths of their hearts. Tuba and Tutu quickly regained their composure after a brief moment of shock. Their weak eyes were filled with pride. In their opinion, as the Nine-Realm Holy Land's Saint's son, everything Yu did was understandable. With this sort of blind worship, it was naturally much easier to accept. Comparatively speaking, Hailan had clearly received a greater psychological impact. Although she had heard all sorts of rumors about the commander, she had never seen him with her own eyes. Her eyes widened. Her approximate psychological fluctuations were, "I knew you were fierce, but I didn't think you were fierce to such a degree. Let's go." When Yu's voice spread out, Hailan was stunned for a moment before she responded. Although she had hidden it well, her fair ears were still flushed red. Holy Nether City fell even more silent. Countless people widened their eyes and unconsciously opened their mouths. Even the elders didn't notice that they were drooling. The expressions on their faces were extremely strange. It was as if they wanted to laugh out loud, but because their facial muscles were stiff, it created a strange sense of déjà vu. The previous deathly stillness was because of the despair in their hearts, and the current silence was because the pleasant surprise had come too quickly and too unexpectedly, making it difficult for them to accept it for a moment. However, they clearly recognized that this was the truth, and the intensity of the turbulence in their hearts was not something that could be understood by outsiders. Lord Commander just patted them and didn't do anything else, but these ferocious sea demonic beasts sank into the sea one by one. If they hadn't seen this with their own eyes, they would have never believed this, even if they were beaten to death. Fu Shan gasped for breath. He felt as if he had suddenly passed through a barrier and returned from a vacuum state. His heart raced so fiercely that he could feel the heat emitting from his body once more. It was like he had come alive. The appearance of the golden blood had caused the endless sea monster beasts to go berserk. This was the most terrifying aspect of it. The endless monster beasts were enough to drown anyone, no matter how formidable one's strength was. Unless they surpassed their limits, and reached a level where they could directly tear open a path. All that awaited them was death. But what Qin displayed now was a strength they couldn't determine. But it was clear that this strength had the same ability to crush the monster beasts of the endless sea. And most importantly, his attacks were light and casual, with no one able to see just how deep he was. It could be seen that this level of method wasn't difficult for Qin. This represented the hope of survival. As long as the Lord Commander could maintain this terrifying strength, then no matter how many monster beasts there were in the endless sea, they would only be sending themselves to their deaths. At this moment, even someone as calm as Fu Shan couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Commander, oh Commander, you are truly unfathomable. This subordinate's reverence towards you is like a surging river that never stops flowing. Beside him, Yuan Zhen's eyes were red. If it weren't for the fact that he had to maintain his dignity in front of his subordinates, he feared he would have already burst into tears. Only after falling into despair could one truly experience the strong impact of hope once again descending upon one's heart. It's just that, Lord Commander, please don't play around anymore. If you have any cards in your hands, hurry up and take them out. Although my heart isn't bad, it still can't withstand being tossed around like this. Shang Yuntai gripped his fists. Although he had full confidence in the Lord Commander, when he saw this scene, he was still excited. Indeed, he hadn't been wrong. In the future, the Lord Commander was destined to step onto the transcendent peak of the land of divinity and demons and compete with the giants of the world. How could he quietly perish in the endless sea? Old Shang, thank you, thank you. Wang Chao's face flushed red. His eyes were filled with ecstasy and shame. He suddenly felt a lingering fear. If Shang Yuntai hadn't stopped him, he might have already died. It would have been fine if he died alone, but if because of his intrusion, the road of sea burial had changed once more, harming the Lord Commander and ruining everyone's hopes, then that would truly be an unforgivable death. Hua Yanting and Yellow Mountain blushed red. They wanted to apologize, but they couldn't open their mouths. They could only secretly swear in their hearts that they would recognize Shang Yuntai as their brother. The Sky Pivot Division Deputy Zhang Yuanlin's panic-stricken mood gradually calmed down as time passed. He secretly thanked his lucky stars and at the same time couldn't help but feel satisfied with his decisiveness. Luckily, he had responded promptly and decisively, eliminating the disaster that day. Otherwise, if he had truly reported the truth, then not to mention the status he had obtained after struggling for so many years, he feared he would have been thrown into prison and his fate would have been miserable. As for whether or not there was a problem with the endless sea's mystic array, Zhang Yuanlin didn't care. They were just a bunch of prisoners who would never be able to rise again. Even if they were killed by pill poisons, they would only die a little earlier. In any case, they would die sooner or later. Perhaps even if they died now, they would be freed. But accidents always came so suddenly and without warning, catching everyone off guard. Deputy Zhang, who was calmly sitting behind a table and sipping tea, subconsciously frowned as he saw his subordinate run in. After holding power for over a year, Zhang Yuanlin had tasted the taste of power, and he placed great importance on his own prestige. What are you panicking for? Calm down and catch your breath. The subordinate paled. He said in a trembling voice, "My lord, the endless sea's great array has changed." The gift he had received several days ago, a fine jade teacup, was smashed to pieces on the ground. But he didn't have time to worry about it. Deputy Zhang's calm and dignified face instantly fell into panic. Right now, what he feared the most was hearing the words, "endless sea." "My lord." Seeing him sit there in a daze, the subordinate couldn't help but remind him. Zhang Yuanlin's eyes turned. He jumped up and clenched his teeth, roaring, "Take me there. Don't have an accident. Please don't have an accident." Within the Sky Core Division, there was a treasure map that floated in the air. It flashed, corresponding to the entire small world of the demonic path's Holy Land. All of the array formations could be seen at a glance. But now, the array formation that represented the endless sea was shining with a blood-red light, making one feel as if a boulder were pressing down on their hearts. The surrounding sky core division cultivators had already stood up. They stared at this scene with wide eyes, a bit of panic on their faces. When the Endless Sea's mystic array formation had an accident, although it had been quickly dealt with and news of it hadn't spread out, it wasn't a secret within the Sky Core Division. It was just that this matter was too important and no one wanted to stir up trouble for themselves. Thus, everyone tacitly maintained their silence and pretended that nothing had happened. But now, it was clear that a great accident had occurred in the Endless Sea. No one knew whether or not today was related to the mystic array formation that had been closed for over a year. If so, then there must have been a major accident in the Endless Sea. Once things reached a point where they couldn't be cleaned up and what happened in the past was revealed, although there were people standing in front of them, no one in the Sky Core Division would be able to escape severe punishment. Zhang Yuanlin pushed his way through the crowd. As he saw the Endless Sea's great array formation erupt with red light, his vision darkened and he nearly fell to the ground. As the deputy of the Sky Core Division, he certainly understood that this meant that a great accident had occurred in the array formation. According to the rules, the Sky Core Division had to immediately report this to the Holy Palace and remind them to investigate what had happened. The Endless Sea was the holy land of the demonic path. Naturally, only the Holy Palace had the authority to investigate. This was the greatest source of fear. Although the Holy Netherguard had been exiled to the Endless Sea, they were still the core armed forces of the Holy Palace. Once they found out what happened in the past, the consequences, Zhang Yuanlin's forehead was covered in a cold sweat. He didn't dare to think any further. After a brief moment of panic, there was only one thought left in his mind. If he didn't do anything, then he would conceal this matter. It was just like the incident with the Endless Sea's mystic array formation. As long as the Sky Core Division kept their mouths shut, no one would know what had happened. Yes, that was it. Zhang Yuanlin took a deep breath, forcefully suppressing his tumbling thoughts. He turned and coldly swept his eyes over the crowd. There has been a false alarm in the Endless Sea's array formation. Temporarily close off the monitoring of this area. Once I have investigated the cause, I will restore it. Do you all understand? Everyone was shocked. Many people's eyes widened, as if this was the first time they had met Deputy Zhang. This lord had always been cautious, but now that something had happened, his methods were swift and fierce. He really couldn't be underestimated. The decision had been made, but unfortunately, Deputy Zhang had miscalculated the impact of this matter. Although the Endless Sea's mystic array formation was important, in the end it only harmed the Holy Netherguard's interests. If he wanted to conceal it, no one would jump out and speak up for the Holy Netherguard, bringing trouble upon themselves. But today was different. The Endless Sea's great array formation covered an extremely large area. It was one of the several super great arrays of the demonic path and was a key area of surveillance. In addition, the Endless Sea's Saint Monarchs and many great figures of the demonic path were buried in the Endless Sea. If there really was an accident, anyone who dared to conceal it would die. Zhang Yuanlin, who gave you the authority to close off the array formation monitoring? An icy cold voice echoed out from behind him. Every syllable was like the sound of flesh being torn apart. Deputy Zhang, who had been trying to use his eyes to frighten everyone, suddenly felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He shivered as he turned around. As he saw the black-dressed Elder Qing Ruhong behind him, she instantly slumped to the ground. Qing Ruhong's complexion was ice-cold. She was the master of the Sky Pivot Division. Although she was in seclusion, if today's matter wasn't handled, well, she would inevitably have to bear responsibility. With her status, no one would dare to make trouble for her even if she made a mistake. But when this involved the Endless Sea, she couldn't be careless no matter what. Come, strip Zhang Yuanlin of all his status and immediately throw him into prison. He will be tried after this matter is over. Zhang Yuanlin's body shook. He wailed, Elder, no. Please be magnanimous and let me off this time. I will never dare to do this again. Qing Ruhong had no expression. Take him away. She quickly walked over to the array formation diagram and closed her eyes. Her mind instantly sank into it. After several breaths of time, she opened her eyes, her complexion becoming increasingly gloomy. The information channel connecting to the endless sea has actually been closed. Good, very good. I was only in seclusion for a short period of time, and you want to overturn the heavens? In an instant, they all knelt on the ground. The Heaven Pivot Division cultivators trembled violently, their faces pale to the extreme. Qing Ruhong took a deep breath. She coldly said, I will definitely investigate what happened while I was in seclusion. Immediately reopen the information channel. I want to know just what happened. Several Sky Pivot Division cultivators jumped up from the ground. They ran to the control panel and reopened the Endless Seas information channel as fast as they could. It was originally a part of the array formation. After reopening it, they would be able to completely collect the detailed feedback from the array formation. On the floating array formation diagram, the blood-red light emitted by the Endless Seas array formation suddenly rose up. A thick and viscous red light sprinkled over everyone's bodies, making them feel as if they were immersed in a sea of blood. Even if it was just a simple light sprinkling down, everyone could smell the thick scent of blood in their noses and mouths. The complexions of the Sky Pivot Division cultivators changed. Their eyes widened as if they had seen an extremely horrifying scene. Their minds rumbled like a broken dam. Astonishment flashed across Qing Ruhong's icy face before she immediately composed herself. But if one looked carefully, they would discover that there were billowing waves deep in her eyes. She was well aware of the true function of the Endless Seas array formation. She naturally knew what this scene before her represented. Within the Holy Netherguard, someone had opened the path to trample the heavens. In the endless years of her life, Qing Ruhong had personally experienced this many times. But without exception, all attempts to obtain freedom and break through their own destiny had ended in tragic endings. Even when the Holy Netherguard tried, they were rarely able to stimulate the formidable strength contained within the array formation. But now, the viscous blood-red light indicated that the person who opened the path to trample the heavens was about to break into the range of the sea. The strength of the Endless Seas array formation had completely erupted. If they could succeed, they would open a new chapter in the history of the Holy Netherguard. They might even be able to change the miserable imprisonment they had suffered for the last 100,000 years. Qing Ruhong let out a long breath. Immediately informed the Holy Palace that the path to trample the heavens will open once more. There's a chance that they will break through the sea. Tell them to prepare. Although the Sky Pivot Division's news was sent to the Holy Palace, the seat of the Holy Monarch was currently empty, and the Holy Palace was only a symbol of supreme power. This news spread through the entire demonic path in the shortest period of time, causing the hearts of countless demonic path cultivators to shake. But as long as they knew the inside story of the Endless Seas array formation, they would understand what this represented. Just what sort of character had come from the Holy Netherguard that they could step into the heavens. With the name Trample the Heavens, one could imagine just how difficult this road would be. Qing Ruhong had been in charge of the Sky Pivot Division for many years, and she had always handled matters calmly. Since she had sent out this news, there was no way it was fake. As they thought about the main body of the Holy Palace that would soon open, there were many more interpretations of why the Holy Netherguard had opened the path to trample the heavens, leaving everyone's thoughts in chaos. But no matter what thoughts they had, they couldn't help but pay attention to that nearly forgotten sea. Some great figures of the demonic path had already set out, preparing to personally witness the arrival of a historic moment. Of course, there was no lack of selfishness in this. According to the restrictions placed on the Holy Netherguard by the Holy Palace, those that passed through the path to trample the heavens would regain their freedom and automatically obtain the qualifications to become the Holy Monarch's personal guard. If one could pass through the path to trample the heavens, one didn't need to be a genius to know that they were inevitably the peak masters of the Holy Netherguard. If they could be recruited as subordinates, that would be like adding wings to a tiger. Moreover, even though the Holy Palace had no master, the Holy Monarch's personal guard was still incomparably honored and had an extremely high status within the Holy Palace. In order to compete for the support of the Holy Palace, this title of personal guard would play an important role. Those that had the qualifications to scheme for the future of the Holy Palace were naturally the peak figures of the demonic path. Although it wasn't to say that their plans were flawless, they would always be able to see things clearly on the surface. Thus, when the demon envoy arrived in the endless sea as the commander of the true demon guard, he was naturally close to the holy nether guard. If they could really pass through the path to trample the heavens, he would have an advantage in winning them over others. A great figure from a Mu family had also arrived. Although he wasn't the Mu family's old ancestor, he was still a newly promoted calamity immortal. Even facing the demon envoy, he remained calm. 100,000 years ago, the previous holy monarch had suddenly died and half of his surname had been changed to Mu. But, as a descendant of the previous holy monarch, his status was still honored. Looking at the calm, endless sea, the Mu family's newly promoted calamity immortal had a look of anticipation in his eyes. This was because it was more accurate to say that the current holy nether guard was the personal guard of the Mu family's ancestor, the holy monarch. They had the status of descendants of the holy monarch, and they also had enough strength to begin with. In the demonic path, subduing these holy nether guards that attempted the path to trample the heavens shouldn't be difficult at all. Moreover, Mumo's existence gave the Mu family hope of competing for the throne of the holy monarch. It could even be said that within the current demonic path, they had the greatest chance of succeeding. Thinking of this, the Mu family's newly promoted calamity immortal was even more eager. They hoped that the holy nether guard would be able to rush through the path to trample the heavens. Thinking of this, the Mu family's newly promoted calamity immortal was even more eager. They hoped that the holy nether guard would be able to rush through the path to trample the heavens. Chinyu didn't know that within the demonic path's holy land small world, because of the commotion they caused, more and more people were hoping that they could rush out of the endless sea, of course. Even if he knew this, it wouldn't be of any help to them. Luckily for him, he had yet to reach large success in the Tao of Water. When he used it in the endless sea, it had formidable attributes. Although it wasn't too realistic to directly cut apart the monster beasts in the sea, tearing open wounds on their bodies was extremely simple. When combined with the terrifying poison contained in his right index finger, overturning them was a matter of course. This was because, strictly speaking, the great Tao body was a level of strength that surpassed that of a calamity immortal. It was a mortal body that only those at a higher boundary could possess. Although it didn't seem to change on the surface, the inside was actually a small world of its own. Chinyu borrowed the power of the poison to cause his right index finger to constantly transform. Finally, he managed to advance to a partial great Tao body. The poison contained within had already begun to mutate, becoming terrifyingly potent. This was the reason why he was able to easily slaughter the monster beasts in the sea as if they were chickens. Hai Lan Lan had already made her move. What she did was simple. She used her own ability to change the direction of the undercurrents in the sea. This was different from forcefully controlling them. This sort of small-scale control didn't consume too much of her energy, but its effects were extremely important. These changing undercurrents would block the crazed monster beasts in the sea, making it so that they wouldn't be able to quickly approach once they entered the killing range of the combined Tao of water and poison. This was because after these monster beasts discovered that they would only be sending themselves to their deaths no matter how many they attacked, they changed their strategy and began to play with self-destruction. That's right, it was this sort of crazy method that didn't require any skill at all. Instead, it was using their lives to send themselves to their deaths. Yet, it caused no small amount of trouble for Chinyu. A single monster beast blowing itself up wasn't anything at all, but what about 10, 100, 1,000, or even more? Even if the Emperor-level demon body was incomparably powerful, it would still be shaken into a pile of minced meat sooner or later. With Hai Lanlan's help, the poison monster beasts were blocked for a moment, and the threat of their self-destruction was greatly reduced. On the whole, they would still be sending themselves to their deaths in vain. Suddenly, a smile lit up Hai Lamlin's face. Because she was naturally indifferent, this smile was especially charming. Qin Yu couldn't help but admit that he was also attracted by it. He was lost in thought for a moment or two. We're about to reach the surface. She carefully sensed her surroundings and continued. If there isn't an accident, we should be able to break through the sea in 10 breaths of time. She glanced at Qin Yu from the corner of her eyes. Even now, Hai Lanlan still felt that everything was a bit unreal. If someone with golden blood appeared, they would have died 10 times over. So how could it be so easy in front of him? Of course, Hai Lanlan understood that this so-called easy was built upon the terrifying strength Qin Yu had revealed. If it were anyone else, they would have already died in the stomachs of monster beasts. As Hai Lanlan discovered that Qin Yu was staring at her, her smile instantly faded. But she didn't feel too angry in her heart. This didn't involve the feelings between men and women. It was just that she should have more tolerance towards powerhouses. Qin Yu was dazed for a moment before he composed himself. He didn't reveal an excited expression like Tuba and Tutu. Instead, his eyebrows furrowed together, a dignified expression on his face. When one's cultivation reached a certain boundary, they would more or less be able to sense the unknown future. This could also be called a formidable intuition. Before entering the road of sea burial, Qin Yu had felt a tremendous threat. It was because Undying was hidden in his body, and he also had another hidden card in his hand, that he had the courage to rush in. But as they walked, they saw that they were about to break through the sea, and yet they hadn't encountered any true dangers. This clearly wasn't right. The golden blood had caused the monster beasts in the sea to go berserk. The situation was terrifying, but in Qin Yu's eyes it wasn't too much of a threat. Moreover, the most important point was that they were only 10 breaths of time away from the sea surface. Qin Yu's heavy heart didn't dissipate at all. Instead, it became increasingly heavy. After thinking for a moment, Qin Yu didn't say anything. He took a step forwards. If there really was a change, he could adapt to it. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. In the distance, he seemed to see a bit of light. 4 breaths, 5 breaths, 6 breaths. The light became increasingly bright. That was the sea's surface. 7 breaths, 8 breaths, 9 breaths. Qin Yu came to a sudden stop. Behind him, Hai Lanlan cried out in pain. Blood wildly gushed out from her head. The bubbles on Tuba and Tutu's bodies instantly burst apart. They were sucked into the sea, blue veins sticking out on their foreheads, and their bones trembled. This sea instantly turned into an invisible hand that grasped the 4 of them. As it tightened, a terrifying strength crazily attacked them. Chapter 547. Qin Yu's attacks were unstoppable. He slaughtered the monster beasts of the endless sea as if they were chickens or ducks. The holy Netherguard, who had been filled with despair, felt their hearts surge with anticipation once more. But when those lights appeared in the road of sea burial, they still felt their hearts shake, because this light meant freedom and hope. 100,000 years had passed. Countless people had been unwilling to submit to their fate and rushed into the road of sea burial. Every single one of them had been buried within, dyeing the stone that opened the road the color of blood. But their deaths hadn't been in vain. Today, the Lord Commander would follow the path that they had paved with their blood and break through this nightmare sea, leading the holy Netherguard into a bright future. Wang Chao's thoughts surged. He suddenly roared out loud. Lord Commander is mighty. Lord Commander is unparalleled. This was a burst of true emotions from his heart. At the same time, it was also a kind of cleansing, a way to redeem himself for the foolish actions he had almost made. He had to thank old Shang once more. If it weren't for him, Wang Chao felt a chill crawl up his back. The consequences would have been unimaginable. Lord Commander is mighty. Lord Commander is unparalleled. Countless people widened their eyes. As they looked at Fu Shan, who was so excited that his eyes were brimming with tears of joy, they were stunned for a moment. Then, as they experienced his current mood, The wild joy that gushed out from the depths of his soul could no longer be suppressed. Lord Commander is mighty and unparalleled. Lord Commander is mighty and unparalleled. Lord Commander is mighty and unparalleled. Billowing waves of voices reverberated through holy Nether City, seeming to shake the sea outside. Tiny ripples appeared on the surface. Shang Yuntai's heart surged. He looked up at that light, at that familiar figure that made one yearn for it. He suddenly felt that this figure was infinitely tall, as if he could break through the heavens and earth, no longer suppressed by any strength. A picture appeared in his mind. This figure would proudly soar upwards until it reached the peak of the heavens and earth. As for him, he would follow behind it, staining himself with its unsurpassed honor and glory. But at this time, Shang Yuntai discovered that within that radiant light, a shadow appeared. Because it was blurry across the water, he could vaguely make out the outline of a face. Then, a hand fell down from the heavens. It was so massive that it seemed to occupy the entire vault of heaven. Endless fear erupted, drowning out the mind. Shang Yuntai didn't know where this hand came from, but his intuition told him that this hand had the strength to completely crush the picture in his mind. No, he roared in terror. The tiny ripples in the sea suddenly burst out a terrifying power. The quiet, endless sea in the deep place suddenly turned into the king of death that could destroy everything. Furious waves rumbled and pounded on the holy Nether City. Even though the protective formation of the city had been operating at full power, it was still shaking under the continuous bombardment. No one knew what had happened, but it didn't stop them from feeling the aura of annihilation. In the sky above the endless sea, many big characters of the demon path descended. Even though they had restrained their auras, their powerful cultivation base could still easily change the rules of heaven and earth around them, creating a distorted space that covered their entire body, not allowing the outside world to peep at them. When the first wave appeared on the calm sea, the distorted space fluctuated at the same time. Pairs of majestic eyes revealed shock. These people actually succeeded. As if to verify the thoughts of these great figures of the demon path. After the first wave appeared, the shaking of the sea became increasingly strong. The seawater began to tumble about, stirring up massive white splashes. It was like a powerful fountain had appeared in the sea, wanting to break through the barrier of the sea and reveal itself to the world. With this, everyone knew what would happen next. The Holy Nether Guard had attempted the road to trampling heaven countless times in the last 100,000 years, and today they had finally succeeded. To put it bluntly, this had an extremely powerful influence on the entire demon path. Everyone's thoughts raced. The eyes of the Mu family's newly ascended calamity, Immortal, shined. His deep eyes were like two slowly rotating nebulae. He looked up, his gaze piercing through the distorted space and falling onto the demon attendant in the distance. Although he was calm, a powerful will was revealed. After crossing the road to trampling heaven and regaining his freedom, the Holy Nether Guard would inevitably become a treasure of the Mu family. The demon attendant frowned for a moment before composing himself. He turned his head, and two invisible eyes collided in the void. In the skies above the endless sea, a strong wind suddenly rose up. Where the Mu family's newly ascended calamity, Immortal, was, the distorted space trembled and nearly collapsed. The Holy Palace's demon attendant. Even though the seat of the Holy Monarch was empty and he couldn't obtain all of the authority and strength, his status was still incomparably honored. If it were that undying old monster from the Mu family today, then perhaps he might have been able to endure it. But how could a mere junior dare to be insolent in front of him? Anyone with the qualifications to sense this confrontation revealed a dignified expression. Although the demonic path was constantly embroiled in internal strife, they were still able to maintain a balance as a whole. But today's matter was too important. It was impossible for the demon attendant or the Mu family to give up. If a frontal conflict were to occur because of this, then whether they were willing or not, they would sooner or later be dragged into the quagmire. As the minds of the various great figures were heavy, a faint aura suddenly appeared in their senses. They all looked up at the clear blue skies, unable to conceal the shock on their faces. Qing Ruhong's complexion changed. She took a step forwards but then stopped. This was because she knew that she could no longer stop this. A bit of sadness rose in her heart. Was this the choice you made? You would rather destroy yourself and drag them down with you. She thought to herself, why must you do this? But she asked herself, if she were in this situation, what choice would she make? She feared it would be the same. Qing Ruhong closed her eyes. She was well aware that after today, she would have to give an explanation to all sides. But she didn't want to think about this right now. In the last 100,000 years, the endless sea's great array formation had given birth to its own consciousness. As the head of the Sky Core Division, she had discovered this a long time ago and had the obligation to erase this consciousness to prevent it from harming the natural operation of the Great Array Formation. But Qing Ruhong was originally a supreme Grandmaster level character in the field of forbidden arrays. After that, she was the head of the Sky Core Division. After hesitating for a long time, she finally reached an agreement with the Great Array Consciousness. The latter couldn't act recklessly, and Qing Ruhong would obtain rewards for her tolerance. With the help of the Great Array Consciousness, she would be able to comprehend more. Reality proved that Qing Ruhong's decision was correct. Communicating with the Great Array Consciousness had greatly benefited her. Many bottlenecks in her cultivation were suddenly cleared, and her cultivation advanced with each passing day. As for the Great Array Consciousness, it kept its promise and perfectly concealed itself. It only silently observed the outside world, not taking any actions that was out of line. Between Qing Ruhong and the Great Array Formation's consciousness, as time passed, they formed a relationship that was similar to friends, but it was even more intimate than normal friends. They both believed that this way of getting along could continue for a long, long time. But changes always came so quickly. When Qing Ruhong received a message and left seclusion, she saw the fierce fluctuations of the endless sea's Great Array Formation. She was filled with anxiety, but she still perfectly carried out her duties. But she never imagined that things would develop to this step. The road to heaven was a glimmer of light that the Holy Palace had left for the Holy Nether Guards. It was a warning to them not to challenge their destiny, and it was also a spur to the endless sea's great array, forcing it to evolve and become even more powerful. She had long heard that the Holy Nether Guards called the road to heaven burial. If they succeeded, they would be buried in the sea, and if they failed, they would be buried in the sea. In truth, to a certain degree, these words were already very close to the truth. This was because between the two sides, it was a battle where either side would die or the other would perish. There was no room for compromise. If the Holy Nether Guards failed and died in the road to heaven burial, not even their bones would be left behind. There was no need to say anything about this. But if they succeeded, the endless sea's great array formation would self-destruct and restart. From this destruction, it would be reborn, becoming even more perfect. After spending some time, it would become even more powerful. Strictly speaking, the endless sea's great array formation hadn't truly been destroyed. But to the great array consciousness, as the great array formation self-destructed and restarted, it would disappear forever. This was no different from death. So in this desperate situation of death, the Great Array Consciousness made a final counterattack. At the cost of breaking through the rules and completely destroying the Great Array Formation, it would drag the person that was about to kill it down with it. The Holy Nether Guards have been trapped in the endless sea for 100,000 years in order to pursue a future of freedom. The endless sea's Great Array Consciousness was unwilling to die like this. There was no absolute right or wrong in this matter. Both sides had their own standpoints. Qing Ruhong looked at the face that appeared in the skies. Although it was far, far too large, she could still see some familiar traces in its outline. A sour feeling rose in her heart. In the long years they had spent together, she had communicated with the Great Array Consciousness more than once. If it were a living person, what would it look like? Qing Ruhong had given it many suggestions. At the time, it had laughed them off, but now it seemed that it had truly remembered them in its heart. The giant face that occupied the skies curved up in a faint smile. Then, it let out a sigh of unwillingness, satisfaction, and guilt. It lifted a hand and pressed down. This was the first and last time that it would break its promise to her. But if it didn't do anything and died like this, it wouldn't be willing. With this press, all fluctuations on the surface of the endless sea were instantly restrained. The entire sea seemed to have transformed into a giant block of ice. However, everyone was able to clearly sense the frightening power that was currently erupting from within the block of ice. The Mu family's newly ascended calamity, Immortal, paled. All of the anticipation in his heart vanished like bubbles. He coldly looked at Qing Ruhong. But facing this powerful character that was ranked in the top 10 of the demonic path, no matter how angry he was, he could only temporarily endure it. The demon envoy sighed, his face filled with regret and helplessness. This wasn't just because of his closeness and sympathy towards the Holy Netherguard, but also because of the preparations he had made. Yao Bin had entered the Endless Sea and obtained the status of a commander of the Holy Netherguard. If he could succeed in his road to trample the heavens, there would inevitably be more room for maneuvers in the future. Unfortunately, all of this had been ended by the spirit of the Endless Sea's Great Array Formation. No one doubted this. It had to be known that the spirit of the Great Array Formation didn't hesitate to completely destroy the Endless Sea's Great Array Formation. The strength it erupted with was something that even a calamity immortal might not be able to escape unscathed. This was a battle to the death where there was no victor. After the face in the skies sent out that strike, it reached the end of its life. No matter what thoughts tumbled in its heart, they would all irreversibly vanish. But at this time it frowned. As it neared death, its powerful intuition caused it to feel a strength that surpassed its imagination. What is that? Before he could finish this last thought, a piercing pain spread through his entire consciousness. Then, like a star that had reached the end of its life, all the light and heat matter suddenly collapsed inward, swallowing and absorbing everything, turning into a black that could not be seen by the naked eye. A dazzling white beam of light tore through space, crashing down from the highest heavens. It was dazzling, and the pure white caused everyone to feel a sense of inferiority and helplessness. This was true for everyone, including the great figures of the demonic path that had gathered in the skies above the Endless Sea. After stepping into the calamity immortal realm and ascending to the peak of the world, it had been a long, long time since they had felt this. It was like a long, long time ago when they first stepped onto the road of cultivation, when their souls trembled in the face of a powerhouse. Of course, this feeling of inferiority and helplessness didn't refer to pure strength, but to the disparity of levels. This white beam of light that came from the highest heavens made them feel as if they were several steps away from it. Pure white, resplendent, dazzling. Although it wasn't thick, it gave off a vast and boundless feeling, as if it covered the entire heavens. Beneath the shocked gazes of countless people, it smashed into the Endless Sea like a block of ice. Then, it instantly shattered apart. When Qin Yu came to a sudden stop, Hai Lan Lan could feel a strength that left her filled with fear and despair. It was so terrifying that it seemed as if the world itself would collapse. Because of her special body, Hai Lan Lan instantly understood that all of them would die. Against such a formidable strength, let alone the four of them. Even if the Holy Netherguard put forth all of their strength and their entire tribe stepped into the Endless Sea, they would still be killed. The road of sea burial was only a road of death to bury the Holy Netherguard. There was no chance of success at all. Since they were doomed to die, why would they use this hopeless situation of death to give the Holy Netherguard hope and tempt them to their deaths? The fear in Hai Lan Lan's heart soon turned to anger. Her body shivered and then erupted in the next moment. Her long hair instantly fell down to her hips, turning a translucent blue. Her eyes were cold and indifferent, as if she were a miniature version of the sea. Layers of ripples appeared, surrounding her as if she were an empress and resisting the destructive strength that came from all around her in accordance with her will. But her cultivation wasn't enough to support this. After several breaths of time, she was on the verge of collapse. The cold indifference in her eyes turned to despair. She didn't fear death, but she really wasn't willing to die. She wanted to leave this sea and question the high and mighty figures of the Holy Palace. Why were they so cruel to the Holy Netherguard? Why were they so cruel? Blood flowed out from her nose and mouth, and her vision began to blur. Hailanlan tried her best to maintain a clear mind. She knew that once she closed her eyes, she would never wake up again. As her eyes dimmed and darkened, she subconsciously glanced at Chinyu. She wanted to know what this man she couldn't see through would look like at this moment. Would he regret his choice? What Hailanlan saw was a calm face. His eyebrows were slightly furrowed, and the creases in his eyes were dignified and solemn, but there wasn't the least bit of fear. After a brief moment of surprise, she didn't know why, but the negative emotions that filled her heart suddenly calmed down a great deal. Perhaps it was because she had been shaken by Chinyu's calmness in the face of death. Hailanlan couldn't help but admit that at this moment, Chinyu possessed an extraordinary charm. Unfortunately, she discovered this a bit too late. As regret lingered in her heart, she saw Chinyu lift his right hand. Did he still want to fight? He was truly worthy of being the man she admired. At this moment, he still maintained a strong heart that hadn't given up. Of course, the truth was that this was only because of the change in her mentality. If it were Hailanlan's previous attitude and Chinyu's current attack, she would likely have despised him in her heart. Death was at hand, and he still wanted to struggle. Didn't he feel tired? To sum it up simply, she could do whatever she liked with him. But now, even if he wanted to resist one last time, he should have used his full strength. What did he mean by only lifting a single hand? A puzzled look flashed in Hailanlan's eyes. Then, a thought popped up in her mind. Did he still have a card in his hand? But soon, she mocked herself inwardly. He said he wasn't afraid of death, but when death arrived, he would instinctively seek out any possibility of survival. As she thought about how many people in Holy Nether City were watching what they were doing, Hailanlan took a deep breath and told herself to remain calm. She couldn't lose face. Although this life wasn't long, she had maintained a decent image. Could it be that she was going to lose all face before she died? As all sorts of thoughts raced through her mind, Hailanlan's field of vision darkened once more. This darkness was different from before. It was like the darkest night of winter before the sun rose, endlessly assaulting her. It submerged her consciousness and pulled her into the endless abyss of darkness. Was she going to die? Hailanlan suddenly felt that she shouldn't waste time thinking about these random thoughts. It would be good to take a good look at the Lord Commander, but it was clearly too late now. Just as she felt that her consciousness was about to be assimilated by the darkness and dissipate, a trace of gentle warmth suddenly appeared. Then, the endless darkness was torn apart by a white light. It was so pure and transparent that it gave off a feeling that she was addicted to. She opened her eyes in a trance. What she saw was Chinyu's back, a translucent picture scroll hanging above his head. Although her line of sight was a bit blurry, she could still recognize and remember the sea they were in. This was something that all members of the Holy Netherguard had learned since they were young. She could immediately see that this picture scroll corresponded to a complete sea chart of the endless sea. And right now, Chinyu's right index finger was at the center of this sea chart. In the next moment, a radiant beam of white light fell down from above, tearing apart the endless sea. It pierced through the wild and murderous seawater all the way to the depths of the sea, all the way to the end of one's line of sight. Chinyu's body shivered. If it weren't for the fact that his Emperor-level demon body was tyrannical enough, he wouldn't have been able to resist the weakening of his body and would have fallen to the ground. The Endless Sea Array Formation's final counterattack. As he felt a strong sense of danger, Chinyu didn't hesitate to summon the sea chart. If it didn't work, then he would directly attack. As his will arrived, The special memories in his mind were instantly activated. Strange syllables began to sing out. What surprised Yu was that although he didn't understand these syllables, he could understand what they were trying to express. This seemed to be a prayer. But at this time, Yu didn't have the time to investigate too much. He looked up at the sea chart that was slowly unfolding above his head and pointed a finger without hesitation. Intuition told him that if he used his right index finger that had transformed into a great Tao body, it would have a greater effect. Yu didn't think about it before directly doing this. The moment his fingertip touched the sea chart, Yu's field of vision darkened. A terrifying swallowing strength erupted from the sea chart, instantly plundering away all the strength in his body. Luckily, this strength seemed to be just enough. In the next moment, you could feel the beam of light that tore through space and descended. It was like an extension of Yu's body, or it could be said that it was a finger that could change where it landed according to his thoughts. At the same time, Yu was well aware of just what sort of terrifying strength was contained within this beam of light. Thus, the beam of light descended from the heavens, tearing apart the endless sea array formation's final counterattack and destroying everything in front of it. There was no hindrance in the entire process. It was like a sharp knife cutting through butter. Even though Yu knew the strength it possessed, he was still shaken by this terrifying might. Great waves rose up in his mind, one that he couldn't calm down for a long time. Yu knew a long time ago that the sea chart could help him summon a powerful strike that surpassed his own within the range of the sea region. But this sort of surpassing was a bit too terrifying. It could be said that this beam of light was the most terrifying strength that you had ever seen or grasped. In this world, there was no such thing as obtaining something for no reason. This sort of formidable strength wouldn't come without a price. At this time, Yu was pleasantly surprised, but he was even more restless. After a long time, Yu took a deep breath and suppressed these thoughts. He had already decided that unless he had no other choice in the future, he wouldn't easily use the strength of the sea chart. When he turned around, he saw Tutu, and Tuba looking at him as if they were looking at an immortal god. Even the usually indifferent Hai Lan Lan couldn't help but widen her eyes. That scene just now had been far too shocking. With a light cough, Yu hesitantly said, "This is a lucky chance that I inadvertently obtained in my early years. I only have one chance to use it, so I've always treated it as a life-saving trump card." Tuba hurriedly nodded. "We believe, Your Highness." Tuta nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Yu had a helpless expression. "Even if you don't believe me, can't you at least show some sincerity?" And indeed, Hai Lan Lan looked at him deeply. "I will absolutely not tell anyone about what happened today. Whatever, it was better not to explain." Yu bitterly smiled. He shook his head, no longer speaking. At the very least, there was one thing that Hai Lan Lan was right about. The matter of the sea chart shouldn't be spread out. As long as he kept his mouth shut, this was some sort of one-time, terrifying trump card that he should be able to deal with. After all, no one would believe him if he were to say that he was able to control such a terrifying power. Yu turned and said, "Now let's go to sea." Hai Lan Lan lowered her head and stood behind him. She could feel that his not-so-tall shoulder was now the safest mountain in the world. "Father, do you see this? Your daughter will soon follow in the commander's footsteps and leave the sea that has trapped you for your entire life. The tragedy that you and Mother experienced will surely disappear from the history of the Holy Netherguard. As for me," Hai Lan Lan looked up at Yu's back. A brilliant light flashed in her eyes, finally turning into a deep firmness, as if she had made an extremely important decision. She had made her decision. She wouldn't regret it. A beam of light from the highest heavens pierced through the endless sea. After this occurred, the entire demonic path's small world fell into a brief silence before falling into a riot. Almost all of the great figures immediately stopped what they were doing and arrived at the endless sea as fast as they could. In contrast to the uproar of the small world, the surface of the endless sea was even quieter. Even the great figures that arrived later restrained their auras and looked towards the sea. If one were to say that this beam of light had nothing to do with the holy Netherguard and the heaven-trampling road, they wouldn't believe it. But if the holy Netherguard truly controlled such a terrifying strength, why would they have waited for 100,000 years? However, none of this was important. Their minds were filled with the need to figure out just where this beam of light had come from. Calamity immortal realm existences, whether they were in the endless sea or not, could instantly feel the terrifying might contained within this beam of light. Now, this beam of light had crashed into the endless sea. But what if it fell on their heads? Who could resist it? At this moment, even the demon attendant fell silent. A lingering fear still lingered between his eyebrows. From that beam of light, he could feel a strong threat of death. Perhaps in the entire demonic path, only his teacher and a few others had a chance of surviving that terrifying beam of light. As for everyone else, they would die without exception. The demon attendant still had some vague worry in his heart, but now that worry had vanished. It was impossible for Yao Bin to possess such a terrifying strength. If so, then he shouldn't be part of the heaven-trampling road today. This was also good. What he should be doing now was hiding in the endless sea and borrowing the support of this powerful barrier. He would silently accumulate his foundation. And at most a few years, he would slaughter his way into the demon world with his teacher and seize the powerful demon blood necessary for him to break into the saint level. At that time, Yao Bin would have completed the transformation of his emperor-level demon body. After obtaining the demon blood, he would have a chance to soar into the heavens. As long as he succeeded, he would undoubtedly become the next holy monarch, and the situation would be set in stone. As for today's splendor and even the inheritance opened by the holy palace master, he could leave that to others. The demon attendant's eyes flashed. He suddenly stepped forwards. He had already discovered the 4 figures that were about to appear beneath the sea. The beam of light in the heavens had not only pierced through the endless sea, but had also crushed their arrogance to pieces. If he was only 80% anxious towards these holy Netherguards before, then now that was at least 100 times greater. He had to recruit them. The newly ascended calamity immortal of the Mu family was called Mu Yuantai. Although his cultivation was much lower than the demon attendants, his attitude wasn't weak at all. Moreover, he could already feel the aura of the old ancestor. Although the old ancestor hadn't appeared yet, he had already arrived at the endless sea. Like this, he naturally had more confidence. Zhao Qianyuan stood in the crowd. Even though there were many supreme beings standing in the skies, they still couldn't completely block out his light. Just by quietly standing there, he naturally attracted many eyes. During the year that Qin Yu stayed in the endless sea, he hadn't wasted a single moment. 4 months ago, he had fought a mysterious calamity immortal and hadn't been defeated, pushing his reputation to the peak. It was rumored that Zhao Qianyuan was only a single level away from the calamity immortal realm. Once he stepped into that realm, he would soar straight into the highest heavens, and his strength would compare to that of a veteran calamity immortal. At this time, he frowned. He stared at the endless sea, a bit of surprise and dread in his eyes. Looking at all the supreme beings present, perhaps he was the only one who could see the depths of that beam of light that fell from the heavens. Could she still be alive? Whoosh! Seawater splashed out in all directions. Qin Yu stepped forwards, his black robes fluttering in the wind. His face was pale because of the severe losses, but there was a calm expression on his face. With such a commotion in the endless sea, it must have shaken the entire world. He was already mentally prepared for this situation. Compared to the Qin Yu of a year ago when he first entered the endless sea, there was a difference between the heavens and the earth. Although he didn't fear the world, he now had the ability to protect himself. Since that was the case, he would jump out in broad daylight. If anyone wanted to be his enemy, they could come at him. Chapter 548. Because he was fearless, because he was fearless, because he was calm. At this time, Qin Yu stood in the eyes of tens of thousands of people. His calm and indifferent appearance formed a sharp contrast with the shocked expressions of the great figures around him. At this time, he seemed particularly dignified and majestic, like a lion sitting on a throne, overlooking his subjects. Of course, this was only an illusion. These great figures had formidable mental fortitude, and they soon composed themselves. However, their eyes flashed with a sharp light, proving that their hearts weren't as tranquil as they appeared on the surface. How could it be him? It was actually him. It was him. This was a gradual change in their thoughts. From shock and disbelief, they finally accepted reality. This was because Qin Yu was standing in front of them, and most importantly, he was standing in front of the four of them. The demonic path placed great emphasis on hierarchy. This sort of position was enough to highlight who the main character was. Moreover, Hai Lan Lan, Tuba, and Tutu had all lowered their heads, an invisible sign of respect. Could they understand that the terrifying beam of light that fell from the heavens just now was Qin Yu's handiwork? Thinking of this, the complexions of the many great figures of the demonic path changed once more. Their eyes became increasingly dignified, and some indescribable thoughts began to subtly change in their hearts. However, they still couldn't figure out how a Blue Sea Realm Junior could control a heaven-destroying strength like that beam of light that fell from the heavens. Was this the terrifying aspect of a White Sun boundary martial talent? It had been a long time since the demon envoy had lost his composure in front of everyone like today. After determining that Qin Yu wouldn't appear here, he immediately broke through the sea. The massive change in his mentality left him in a daze. But right now, everyone had similar expressions. No one was in the mood to laugh at this matter. At this moment, the demon envoy's mind was like a raging sea. Countless thoughts swam back and forth like fish, making him feel as if this matter was unrealistic and beyond his imagination. His expectations for Qin Yu were that he would soar into the heavens several years from now. But reality was far more wonderful than his imagination. It seemed that from the very beginning, all of his plans had never been smoothly realized by this boy. After crossing the heaven-treading road and burying himself in the endless sea, Qin Yu had undoubtedly shaken the entire demonic path once more, just like during the demon body talent test. The demon envoy was well aware that he no longer had a chance to suppress Qin Yu. If he was given time to quietly grow, some people wouldn't allow him to continue. He could only hope that Qin Yu had made all of his preparations. At that time, his glory would eventually fade, and he would face an extremely dangerous situation. But perhaps he wasn't afraid at all. The pillar of light that descended from the sky had been deeply imprinted in everyone's hearts. Even if they had evil intentions, they might not dare to make a move. The excitement and anticipation on Mu Yuantai's face had vanished into thin air. Now, all that was left was an ashen expression. His eyes were filled with rage, and killing intent surged in his heart. At this moment, he'd already cursed Mu Xianglin 10,000 times in his heart. This stupid pig. It's already been a year since the clan reported Yao Bin's death, yet he's still alive and kicking, and it's even to the extent that he broke out of the ocean today. As for whether or not cursing a pig of his own bloodline would implicate him, the furious Mu Yuantai couldn't care less. Just a moment ago, he had been thinking that no matter what, he had to recruit these people. But now, he discovered that the people he wanted to recruit were actually his mortal enemies. How could this feeling be described as King Dog? If it weren't for the fact that a Calamity Immortal's heart was sufficiently strong, he might have already spat out a mouthful of blood. Mu Yuanzi could feel countless eyes falling on his face. Some of them were worried, but there was also playfulness, sympathy, and even mockery. The Mu family was indeed strong, but within the demonic path, there were still many opponents both in the open and in the dark. A massive family that had occupied the honored status of descendant of the Holy Lord for 100,000 years would inevitably encroach upon the interests of many people. This was an inevitable result. Yao Bin's appearance and the horrifying speculations today would have a tremendous impact on the Mu family. It was even possible that it would affect the foundation of the entire Mu family and even its future. Suddenly, for beams of light cut through the horizon, dragging long tails behind them. They held forth like meteors. Without pause, these 4 beams of light fused into the bodies of the 4 people. In the next moment, a deep and deep voice filled with endless majesty resounded through the endless sea. You have courageously crossed the road of trampling heaven. I bestow upon you the rank of personal guard and share the glory of the Holy Lord. Exquisite armor appeared on the surface of Hylon Lon, Tuba, and Tutu's bodies. This armor was different from the true Demon Guard and Holy Nether Guard's full-body armor. It only protected the vital areas of their bodies, and the empty areas were covered with a dark golden halo. A powerful aura erupted from it, sweeping out in all directions. Countless eyes revealed envy. Even the great figures of the demonic path were no exception. It had to be known that the Holy Sovereign's personal guard had an extremely honored status. Although they didn't have much authority, their true rank was only a bit lower than that of a commander. Moreover, because they were the personal guards of the Holy Sovereign, they had to deal with all sorts of terrifying situations. Thus, the personal guards possessed the Rui armor. Even a calamity, immortal realm existence wouldn't be able to easily break through it. It could be called a supreme defensive treasure of the demonic path. 100,000 years ago, the Holy Lord had suddenly died, and the personal guards had been stripped of their status. Ever since then, the throne had been left vacant. There were only a few people that had obtained the Rui armor, and each one was an existence that all sides wanted to win over. But today, 4 of them had appeared at once, and something didn't seem quite right. Yao Bin, where was that boy's Rui armor? Many people's eyes were still lingering on Hai Lanlin's alluring figure because of the Rui armor. As for the great figures that were shrewd and deep, they had already begun to retract their focus. They had keenly sensed the crux of the matter. 4 sets of Rui armor had appeared at the same time. 3 sets had already appeared, so there was no reason for Yao Bin's armor to not appear. Mu Yuantai's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know why, but at this moment, he suddenly had a foreboding premonition, as if something was about to happen. At this time, layers of light surged on the surface of his body, as if it were a fusion of pure darkness and deep purple. But the feeling it gave off wasn't strange at all. Rather, it was filled with an indescribable sense of honor, one that instinctively felt awe when they looked at it. Circles of complex and exquisite lines appeared, drawing out the phantom of the armor. It emerged from the layers of light and rapidly condensed into reality. Saint's sovereign armor, a great figure of the demonic path, cried out. His pupils shrank, and his face was filled with shock. On the endless sea, all sounds of breathing seemed to vanish at this moment. There wasn't a single sound left. In this world, the only one that could wield the Saint's sovereign armor was the Holy Sovereign. As soon as this thought appeared, it caused everyone's hearts to shake. It was like a million bolts of thunder were roaring in their hearts, causing their souls to tremble. If Qin, you could obtain the Saint's sovereign armor today, then from this moment on, he would be the transcendent Saint Sovereign of the demonic path. There was no doubt about it. The demon envoy's eyes lit up with excitement before revealing a bit of disappointment. This wasn't the Saint's sovereign armor, but with this armor, Qin Yu's status within the demonic path would still rise. No, it's not the Saint Emperor armor. It's the inferior Saint's Son armor. Mu Yuantai said loudly. His heartstrings suddenly relaxed, his back actually already drenched in cold sweat. If a Holy Lord appeared today, then what awaited the Mu family was inevitable destruction. Even if he was at the Calamity Immortal Realm, he feared it would still be difficult for him to escape this great calamity. That's right, it's Saint... Strange. Why would the Sacred Palace bestow Saint armor? Could it be that the Sacred Palace has already sensed Yao Bin's White Sun aptitude? Although there are no precedents, it does make sense if we think of the White Sun realm as a starting point. Many great figures of the demonic path began to think. Most of them felt relieved. If a Holy Lord had suddenly appeared today, it would have been difficult for them to accept. It was just that there were several changes in their eyes compared to before. It seemed that the sacred palace was also very optimistic about Yao Bin. Did this represent some sort of will? Moreover, it just so happened that the sacred palace's main body was about to open. They couldn't help but think about it. Mu Yuantai's heart was filled with the feeling of having just survived a calamity. His complexion became increasingly ugly. He could feel the changes in everyone's mentality. If this continued, then the Mu family situation would rapidly worsen. His thoughts raced. Mu Yuantai suddenly stepped forwards and said, "Yao Bin, with my status as a calamity immortal of the demonic path, I would like to ask you something. Just what was that beam of light that fell from the highest heavens just now?" One couldn't help but acknowledge that a character that could break into the calamity immortal realm was not someone easy to deal with. Mu Yuantai had easily grasped the crux of the matter. Yao Bin already had the talent to reach the white sun boundary. Whether or not he obtained Saint A was just the icing on the cake. It didn't affect him too much because he himself was already amazing enough. But that beam of light that fell from the heavens was different. It had the strength to kill calamity immortals. It was the greatest weight that changed everyone's minds. Qingyu looked up. Under the contrast of holy sun armor, his calm face seemed even more resolute and dignified. But before he could speak, the demon envoy had already said in a low voice, "Mu Yuantai, this matter may involve Yao Bin's great secret. How can you speak of it in front of everyone?" Mu Yuantai clenched his teeth. "No, this matter is far too important, and it might involve the safety of the demonic path. I must clearly explain it. Being in the eyes of everyone was the best opportunity. Otherwise, if he missed this chance, Yao Bin's fame would spread throughout the demonic path, and he would become a great force that would be detrimental to the Mu family." The demon envoy's eyes were ice cold. "How insolent! Do you have the qualifications to speak with my will?" Bang! The boundless aura of a calamity immortal erupted, pressing down like a mountain. How could he not know what Mu Yuantai was thinking? Since Yao Bin had already leapt out of his field of vision, it was impossible for him to continue growing in a low profile. Thus, he naturally had to express his attitude today and give Yao Bin the greatest support he could. Although the demon envoy didn't know what the beam of light that fell from the heavens was, he understood that even if it was the work of Yao Bin, there was a 90% chance that it was some sort of terrifying one-time usability. But even if there was only a slight uncertainty, it was still enough to leave others in awe. If he could investigate this matter a day later, he would be able to consolidate his dignity and win over the hearts of more people. Yuantai indeed doesn't understand the rules. But what if I want to know? With a light voice, a figure appeared. His hair was white and his face was lined with wrinkles. His entire body was filled with the aura of decay, but his slightly stooped body actually released an aura that caused the heavens and earth to tremble. Faint fluctuations spread out from him like a gentle breeze on a lake surface. With him, as the center, countless demonic path supreme elders' complexions changed and shock appeared in their eyes. This undying old monster of the Mu family was actually strong to such a degree. Today he had publicly appeared and even revealed such terrifying strength. It could be seen that Yao Bin's appearance left him feeling restless. And more importantly, Yao Bin had to give an explanation for the beam of light that fell from the heavens. This was because even the demon envoy didn't have much authority in front of the Mu family's old ancestor. The Mu family's old ancestor turned around. His eyes were calm and flat. Without saying a single word, the world seemed to freeze over. A cold light flashed in the demon envoy's eyes. But it was unknown what he was thinking, and he finally suppressed these thoughts. His face darkened, and he remained silent. Qingyu felt as if he were facing a towering mountain. The terrifying suppression caused his soul to instinctively scream. Even if this old monster couldn't compare to the Dao Arena Master and the others, he was absolutely one of the peak super powerhouses in the world. Qingyu didn't know his identity, but there was one thing he was sure of. This old monster didn't have the least bit of a favorable impression of him. In fact, he even wished to tear him to shreds. Mu Yuantai, Mu family, Qin Yu's heart chilled. This was truly worthy of being a descendant family of the previous holy monarch. They actually had two calamity immortals, and one of them was even more terrifying. Luckily, his emperor-level demon body had completed its transformation, and he had also inexplicably obtained the so-called Saint Sun armor that had fused with the demon god armor. With his current strength, he didn't need to worry about being killed in a single confrontation. As long as there was room to resist, Tuba and Tutu were by his side, and he also had many hidden cards in his hands. Although there was no hope of victory, escaping wouldn't be difficult. Qin Yu calmed down a little. He took a deep breath and cupped his hands together. Yao Bin greets Senior. The beam of light that fell from the heavens just now was indeed my hand. He was calm and composed, neither servile nor overbearing. Everyone's complexions changed. Even though they had already guessed this, hearing him admit it still left them shaken. In truth, the might of that beam of light just now was far too terrifying. It could easily kill a calamity immortal, so they naturally dreaded it. The Mu family's old ancestor's eyes flashed. He had already used a soul suppression arcane technique in order to humiliate Qin Yu in front of everyone, but he didn't expect Qin Yu to remain so calm. His plan failed, and surprise flashed in his heart. Then, his killing intent rose even higher. Qin Yu's talent was outstanding, and he also had such mental fortitude. If he didn't eliminate him soon, he would become a great calamity for the Mu family. This old monster had lived for countless years, and his thoughts were as deep as the sea. Even though killing intent surged in his heart like a cold tide, he didn't reveal any of it on his face. "I wonder, Yao Bin, how did you do it?" Qin Yu lightly said. "In my early years, I inadvertently obtained a special treasure that saved my life several times. Unfortunately, the number of times I can use it is limited, so I don't want to use it unless I am in a life or death situation." As he spoke to her, he shook his head. "It's just that today, not even I imagined the might of this treasure would be like this." His words were a mixture of truth and lies. The sea map had indeed saved Qin Yu's life, but he also didn't expect its might today. The reason he changed his mind and gave such an ambiguous answer was because he feared this old monster from the Mu family. Whether he believed him or not, he had to first scare him. Before he could clearly investigate this matter, this old monster wouldn't dare to act rashly. The demon envoy suddenly said, "Mr. Mu, the Holy Palace will naturally investigate these matters. You have an exalted status, so there is no need for you to waste your time on a junior." His voice was light, but there seemed to be some fluctuations within it. They rushed into the void, stirring up some invisible aura. The Mu family old ancestor was silent for a moment. Then he smiled and said, "What you say isn't wrong. I am already a man on the verge of death. If I interfere in these matters, I fear others will secretly complain about me. However, there's one thing you're wrong about, Demon Envoy. Yao Bin has the talent to step into the white sun boundary, and he was able to break through the sea today. It wouldn't be too much to say that he is the future hope of my demonic path. Moreover, he has great hopes of inheriting the position of Holy Monarch. He isn't someone that can be summed up by just being a junior." The old monster swept his cold eyes over and chuckled. Then, he turned and stepped down, vanishing from sight. The demon envoy's tense back relaxed a little, and he let out an imperceptible breath. He was worried that this old monster would find a reason to attack him. It had to be known that the current Yao Bin was a formidable threat to the entire Mu family, much less those that benefited from it. Luckily, this old monster still had some scruples and didn't dare to act recklessly. The Mu family left. After a moment of hesitation, a portion of the great figures of the demonic path on the endless sea also dispersed. But an even greater portion stayed behind. They didn't do much, only arriving at Qin Yu's side and greeting him with a smile. They didn't make any promises. They simply exchanged a few words and then left. But the meaning of this in itself was enough to shake the hearts of everyone present. This was the privilege of these great figures. In the skies above the endless sea, there were many demonic path cultivators that didn't have the qualifications to approach. But Zhao Qianyuan was an exception. He wasn't at the calamity immortal realm, but his status in the demonic path was no lower than that of a calamity immortal. In fact, when he stepped forwards, a calamity immortal hesitated for a moment and then chose to wait. From this alone, one could tell that the current Zhao Qianyuan had the potential to step into the highest heavens. I always believed that you would emerge from the endless sea and leave everyone shaken. But I never thought it would be so fast. Zhao Qianyuan smiled and spoke with a gentle tone, not at all different from before. But Qinyu didn't know whether or not it was an illusion, but he could faintly feel a bit of probing in his eyes. But when he carefully sensed it, this feeling had disappeared without a trace. After a brief pause, Qinyu smiled and said, "Brother Zhao's cultivation is progressing with each passing day. I don't want to be left behind, so I naturally have to work even harder." There was a reason for these words. Although he didn't know that Zhao Qianyuan had become an illustrious and famous figure in the demonic path, he could tell that his aura was shaking the world. He was no weaker than a calamity immortal realm existence. He wasn't a calamity immortal, but he was no weaker than a calamity immortal. If one could thoroughly understand the profound meaning behind this, they would understand just how astonishing it was. Zhao Qianyuan shook his head. Brother Yao is too modest. He cupped his hands together and bowed. Today isn't the time to speak. If I have free time, I will personally pay a visit. I will bid my farewells first. Brother Zhao, take care. The two bid their farewells and parted ways. This scene fell into the eyes of many people, and they all sighed with emotion. These two people had only entered the demonic path for a year or so, but they had already left everyone else far behind on their road to cultivation. Without accident, this disparity would only grow greater and greater until there was no chance of catching up. Dong Hanju looked away. He silently turned and left. A year ago, he believed he had the qualifications to compete with Qinyu. But now, he didn't even have the chance to speak with him. It wasn't that he didn't work hard enough, but that some people could only be called monstrous geniuses. Dong Hanju clenched his fist beneath his sleeves. This was because he hadn't given up all hope. Perhaps Zhao Qianyuan and Qinyu had already left him far behind, but that didn't mean he didn't have the chance to catch up. The opening of the Holy Palace's main body was imminent. This was a great lucky chance. If he could obtain some harvests, his strength would surely rise by leaps and bounds. Sun Zifu lowered his head. He suddenly said, "Honorable Master, let's go. Aren't you going to say hello?" The chubby, round-headed old man squinted his small eyes and grinned. Sun Zifu bitterly smiled. "I don't have the qualifications." He took a deep breath. "At least, not today." The old man nodded. "It's good that you know the disparity. Cultivate well in the future and don't waste it." He muttered and swallowed his words. His eyes looked around, and when he saw that no one was paying attention to them, he slapped his forehead, a relieved expression on his face. Sun Zifu helplessly smiled. Honorable Master was good at everything. It was just that sometimes he lacked a guard over his words. He looked deeply at Qinyu, who was surrounded by the crowd, and then turned to leave. The old man smiled and followed. Everything in the world was constantly transforming as time passed. When you grew, others wouldn't stop. Chapter 549. Holy Palace, Demon Attendance Hall. Warm sunlight sprinkled down. Hai Lan Lan lifted her fingertips, feeling the taste of sunlight mixed with a gentle breeze. Tears surged in her clear and cold eyes, reflecting a dazzling halo of light. At this moment, she temporarily cast aside everything in the outside world. She sincerely felt this thing called freedom. From today onwards, the shackles no longer existed. She could freely walk between the heavens and earth, no longer looking up at that oppressive sea. In a meticulously maintained garden, all sorts of flowers bloomed. Butterflies and bees fluttered about, and the woman beneath the sunlight seemed to be embedded in this painting. Qinyu's eyes passed through the window, taking in all of this. His heart stirred. He could roughly understand what Hai Lan Lan was feeling right now. Looking away, he looked at the demon attendant sitting across from him. He lightly said, "She has waited countless years for today's scene. The reason I brought her here is because I don't want anyone to ruin all of this." The demon attendant calmly looked out the window. "I have the same thoughts as you. But in the end, the key to all of this lies with you." He turned, his eyes as sharp as knives. "If you succeed to the throne of the Holy Monarch, everything will follow your will. Otherwise, no matter how much hope you give her now, in the future she will experience despair 10 times, 100 times greater." From today onwards, the Holy Netherguard's position had been made clear. If Qin, you couldn't inherit the throne, then once a new Holy Monarch appeared, they would inevitably carry out a cruel purge. Because it was absolutely impossible for an army that was not loyal enough to survive. It wasn't just Qin Yu who had no path of retreat. The Holy Netherguard was the same. Qin Yu frowned. He could feel an invisible pressure on his shoulders. He took a deep breath. "How can I trust you?" The demon attendant arched an eyebrow. "Can't you trust me with my performance?" Qin Yu nodded and then shook his head. "I trust you. That is why I came here with you. But trust is divided into different levels. I need a clearer reason. Lord Demon Attendant, why are you helping me?" The demon attendant was silent for a long time. He slowly said, "The reason is simple and also very old-fashioned. My enmity with the Mu family is as deep as the sea, so I will not allow them to obtain the throne of the Holy Monarch." "My lord, please explain in more detail." "In the past, the Mu family seized the throne of the Holy Monarch from my ancestors' hands. In that moment, space nearly froze. An invisible oppressive aura erupted. Qin, you could even hear the mournful cries of the rules. However, all of this was confined within the room, not leaking out in the slightest. In his chest, his heart began to beat vigorously, pushing his blood to the limit. Every inch of his flesh, blood, tendons, and bones emitted a silent roar. The saint armor appeared on its own, and a blackish-purple halo flowed and covered his entire body, making him look like a resurrected demon god. The demon envoy revealed a shocked expression. "Your emperor-level demon body has completed its transformation?" Qin nodded. Yes. He had confirmed that the one who had banished him to the endless sea was this man in front of him. If so, he shouldn't have bad intentions. Qin Yu's thoughts raced. He thought back to when he was in Heavenly Demon City and the demon attendant had probed him. It was likely that he had been discovered at that time, thus exposing his emperor-level demon body. Even though he had already sensed it, Qin Yu nodded in acknowledgement. Even so, the demon attendant's heart was still filled with great waves. After a long time, he said, "You are far more outstanding than I expected. Even in the history of demon body cultivation, there is no one that can compare with you. I originally thought that you would need several more years to complete your demon body transformation." He shook his head. "No wonder you didn't hesitate to rush through the path of trampling heaven in order to leave the endless sea. Cultivating the demon body is like rowing a boat against the current. You cannot lose your indomitable momentum. If you delay for several years without making any progress, it will be a great danger to you. It seems that sending you into the endless sea was my lack of consideration." It really was him. Qin Yu said, "Lord Demon Attendant, perhaps we should have an open and honest discussion." An hour later, the two of them sat down in silence, each digesting what the other had said. Qin Yu had answered the demon attendant's questions, including the reason for achieving the emperor-level demon body. But he hadn't told him everything. Of course, Qin Yu believed that the demon attendant was also holding back, but he could still make a judgment based on this. The demon attendant could be trusted, at least for now. The Holy Palace's main body is about to open. Since you have completed the transformation of the emperor-level demon body, you have a great advantage. If you can obtain the inheritance of the Holy Sovereign, then you can obtain the status of Holy Son. The Holy Son is the only successor to the Holy Sovereign and has an incomparably honored status. Moreover, you can obtain a portion of the authority that belonged to His Majesty, the Holy Sovereign, ahead of time. Believe me, as long as you obtain this portion of authority, there will be no one in the demonic path that can harm you." The demon attendant had a dignified expression, but Let me remind you that even if you have an emperor-level demon body, you absolutely cannot be careless. The Mu family has made many arrangements this time. They are determined to obtain the inheritance of the Holy Palace. Shinyu stood up and walked to the window. He looked at the flowers and saw a brightly smiling figure. Lord Demon Attendant, rest assured that I will do my best. For himself, and also for these people who had placed their futures and fates in his hands. The previous Demon Attendant sighed with emotion. Emperor-level demon body. Emperor-level demon body. Perhaps I have really grown old. I can't even see through the depths of the youths of today. He shook his head again and again. In front of his closest disciple, he didn't conceal the shock on his face. To tell the truth, this disciple also expended a great deal of effort to not lose face in front of Yao Bin. I was just barely able to maintain my face. The demon attendant forced a smile. Teacher, is a white sun boundary talent really so formidable? In the ancient texts, there has never been anyone with such a speed. The previous demon attendant's eyes flashed. Perhaps there are secrets on Yao Bin's body that you and I don't know about. His tone changed. Have you investigated his background? The demon attendant nodded. There are indeed some problems with Yao Bin's background. He immediately spoke of all the information he had obtained from the Black Demon sect. According to the records, he is at least several hundred years old. It doesn't match with the current age. The previous demon attendant frowned. Continue to investigate. If you find anything wrong. His tone was icy cold. The demon attendant hesitated for a moment. I think that teacher is overthinking things. There is no connection between Yao Bin and the immortal sect. The previous demon attendant lightly said, when it comes to the throne of the Holy Monarch, there is no need to be too cautious. Yes, this disciple understands. Cloud Grove City Mu family. Yao Bin crossing the road of stepping on the sea was like a hammer to the head. Everyone in the Mu family felt their ears ring and their field of vision darken. The one who was the most shocked and angry was Mu Xianglin. There were some people who didn't accept him being in charge of the daily affairs of the family. Deep in their eyes, there was a gloating look in their eyes. Old ancestor, this is Xianglin's fault. I will definitely investigate this matter and give you an explanation. Mu Xianglin clenched his teeth, his heart at a loss. According to the information gathered from all sides, there was no way that Yao Bin would be able to escape. But reality was always like this. He had no choice but to accept it. Mu Yuantai sucked in a deep breath. Old ancestor, now is not the time to investigate who is responsible. Yao Bin's sudden appearance might cause some changes in the matter of the Holy Palace's inheritance. The Mu family old ancestor opened his eyes. How is Mu Mo's condition? Mu Xianglin hurriedly said. Reporting to the old ancestor, Mu Mo has already smoothly made a breakthrough. He now has a sovereign-level demon body and is currently consolidating his boundary. He said in a low voice, even if Yao Bin has a white sun boundary talent, it is impossible for him to become a sovereign in a short year. As long as the Holy Palace's main body opens and Mu Mo enters the Holy Palace before him, then everything will be settled. The Mu family old ancestor was silent for several breaths of time. He lifted his palm and light surged. A black crystal appeared. Give this to Mu Mo, tell him that no accidents can occur. Mu Xianglin's eyes widened. Then, a look of pleasant surprise crossed his face. Thank you, old ancestor. With this holy ancestor treasure in hand, nothing will go wrong. So what if Mu Mo had a white sun boundary talent? As long as Mu Mo obtained the Holy Sovereign's inheritance, he could become a holy son. The Mu family had painstakingly planned for all these years, and it was finally time for them to bear fruit. Chapter 550. In the demonic path's holy land small world, if one were to speak of tragic lands, the endless sea was one of them. But there was another place that wasn't inferior. This was because it involved the face of the demonic path and was taboo to those in the upper echelons of power. So they intentionally or unintentionally suppressed it, causing it to fade from everyone's sight. Perhaps many people wouldn't believe it, But the second tragic land was the Holy Emperor Palace that received the awe of the entire demonic path and was pursued by countless proud children of heaven. The previous Holy Emperor had died 100,000 years ago without leaving behind a holy son, causing the throne of the Holy Emperor to be vacant for 100,000 years. The main body of the Holy Palace had been sealed away, and all of the Holy Emperor's concubines, maids, and servants had been sealed away, no longer having any contact with the outside world. In a way, the fates of these women were even more tragic than those of the holy nether guards trapped in the endless sea. They could only slowly wither away over the endless years. Even though the main body of the Holy Palace would open it every once in a while in order to find a successor to the Holy Monarch, the women that were sealed away had no chance of leaving. From the moment they entered the Holy Palace, their fates had fused together with the majesty and majesty of this palace. Without the command of the Holy Monarch, they would never be able to leave. In the eyes of outsiders, the main body of the Holy Palace represented unsurpassed dignity and majesty. It symbolized the supreme status of the demonic path, and it was also the incarnation of lucky chances and good fortune, a carp that leapt through the dragon gate. But to these lonely women, it was only a dark prison that swallowed up their lives. The Holy Nether Guards had the 9 perils of treading heaven's path, but they had no chance at all. There was no one more eager than them to give birth to a new Holy Monarch. Even if this meant that many of them would die, sometimes living was more torturous than death. The main body of the Holy Palace was sealed away, completely sealed away. There was no wind, no rain, no air, no light. Everything was isolated outside. In the darkness, not even flames could burn. There were only round beads that emitted a pale green halo in the darkness. A tall figure shrouded in a black robe subconsciously shrank her head. She didn't know if it was because of the rumored beads made from bones, or because of the scorching gazes that were looking at her from the darkness around her. A light cough came from above. The tall figure finally relaxed. This was because the creepy gazes that had surrounded her for so long had finally vanished. She glanced at the black-robed man who was curled up into a ball. There was fear in her eyes, but also gratitude. Seemingly satisfied with the tall figure's reaction, Black-Robe's gaze became gentler and gentler. Don't be afraid. They're all unlucky. Looking at you now, they can't help but envy you. Come closer to me. After the announcement, you will return to the palace with me. Her voice was soft and gentle, giving off the feeling of a spring breeze. One could not help but feel close to her from the bottom of their hearts. The tall figure hurriedly bowed and replied respectfully. Her tone revealed a bit of excitement. The black-robed person on the throne smiled. She turned to look at Her Highness. Her speed was slow, giving off a feeling that she was stiff but still trying to maintain her composure. Her voice was still soft and gentle. In 5 days, the Holy Palace will be unsealed once more. You and I, those who deserve to die, will finally have something to look forward to. She paused for a moment. But how many times have we welcomed such an expectation? Every time, he would be filled with disappointment and break our hearts. So this time, I am prepared to make a few changes. Although there are places that violate the rules, I hope that my sisters can agree. There was an uproar amongst the shadows. It was clear that this news had caused a considerable impact on them. But in the end, there was still fear and unease in their hearts, so no one said anything. But in the end, someone stood up. Big sister, what are you planning to do? This voice wasn't pleasant to listen to. It was like 2 pieces of dried meat rubbing against each other, piercing one's eardrums. On the throne, the black-robed person leaned back, as if she had found a comfortable position. She let out a deep breath and said in a soft voice, "The reason U.S. sisters are trapped in the Holy Palace is because the throne of the Holy Monarch is empty. As long as a new Holy Monarch appears, he will be able to resolve our sufferings with a single command. So, I am prepared to take an inheritance and place it at the entrance of the Holy Palace. The first junior to step into the Holy Palace will naturally be the most outstanding existence of the current demon body. After obtaining the inheritance, he might be able to step into the highest heavens in a single go. Big sister, I object. The harsh voice was resolute and decisive. The Holy Palace already has an iron law. Because the Holy Monarch's inheritance is freely arranged, it involves the destiny of the Holy Palace and the future. No one can interfere, otherwise a great disaster will befall us. If it weren't for this, how could we have ended up here today? Little sister, you're right. But 100,000 years have already passed. How much longer can we hold on? I don't want to live another day in this damnable state where I'm neither human nor ghost. She swept her gaze around. I believe that all of you sisters are thinking the same thing as me. Big sister, there's no need to say anything more. I have already made my decision. Since everyone has a different opinion, then let's vote. Those sisters that agree with me, please withdraw from the hall. Those that don't, please stay behind. The tall figure at the side trembled imperceptibly. She lowered her head and was about to bow when she was stopped by the black-robed person on the throne. You do not need to leave. Stay here. Since I have chosen you as my successor, you should accumulate some experience in dealing with matters so that you won't be flustered in the future. The tall figure lowered her head and nodded. Beneath the black robes, she vaguely glanced at the Highness, as if she wanted to remind him of something. But in the end, she didn't receive a response. The sound of footsteps echoed out. At first there were only a few, but they became more and more chaotic. Faintly, there was a hint of fear. Soon, the entire hall emptied out. There were only 4 figures left. The one with the particularly harsh voice was one of them. The black-robed person on the throne said in a soft voice, "For little sisters, do you really want to object? The Holy Palace has a rule. In order to avoid disaster, as long as one of us does not agree, the resolution cannot be passed. Big sister, I know that you have suffered a great deal, but if you and I persist, there is still hope. Why take such a risk?" "Huh?" The person on the throne sighed. "We have relied on each other for 100,000 years. Even if there are grudges between us, they have long since faded away. Why must it be like this for little sisters? Big sister has let you down, but please leave." Bang! Blood-red flames gushed out from beneath the hall, instantly swallowing up the 4 people and illuminating the dark hall. Beneath the blood-red flames, the black robes on their bodies were instantly burnt to ashes, revealing 4 nearly dried-up, corpse-like bodies. As if all moisture had been drained from their bodies, their hair stuck to their scalps like withered grass. Only their sunken eye sockets and the dim light they emitted proved that they were still alive. There were no cries of pain. In fact, the eyes of the 4 people in the flames flashed with anger and astonishment for a brief moment before revealing a sense of relief and relief. They were slowly decomposed in the blood-red flames, burned into tiny fragments that gradually melted away until they completely disappeared. On the throne, the curled-up black-robed person stood up with difficulty. Her back was extremely hunched, and she reached out with a trembling hand. A tall figure beside her respectfully knelt down. She pulled off the hood that covered her head, revealing a beautiful and exquisite face that was especially pale from not seeing light for a long time. Her long eyelashes trembled, expressing the fear and unease in her heart. At this moment, the black-robed person on the throne had an incomparably gentle gaze, as if she were looking at a rare treasure. "Yuchi, do not be afraid. I will take care of you. It's been 100,000 years, an endless 100,000 years. We're all a bunch of pitiful people who deserve to die. Only you're lucky. Only you're lucky." Chapter 551/P. The day before the Holy Palace's main body opened, Qin saw Hai Lan. It seemed that because she had left the endless sea, the icy chill that had accumulated in her heart had finally been released. The indifference between her eyebrows had faded a bit, and there was even a bit of warmth in her eyes. This was something Qin was happy to see. He smiled and said, "What? Are you not used to it?" Hai Lan shook her head and bowed respectfully. "Everything is fine. Today, I came to see the commander to apologize for my naivety and ignorance. I hope that the commander can forgive me." Saying that, she bowed down and performed a huge bow. Her long dress was tight, revealing her slim waist and even more beautiful curves at the chaotic origin level. Qin was startled, a bit confused. What happened in the past is already in the past. Moreover, when you and I rushed through the road of sea burial together, that was already a life and death experience. There is no need to mention those things in the future. With a flick of his sleeves, a gentle force surged through the air. Hai Lan Lan did not resist and obediently stood up from the ground. For some reason, there was a slight blush on her pretty face. She raised her hand to tuck a strand of hair from her temples and said softly, "Since that's the case, from today onwards, Lord Commander and I can be considered to have met each other again." He was a bit bewildered, but a woman's thoughts were 1,000 feet deep. How could they be easily touched? Qin smiled and nodded, acknowledging her words. Hai Lan Lan was in a good mood. She said a few more words before leaving. But after taking a few steps, she suddenly turned around. "Lord Commander, do you think the dress I'm wearing today looks good?" Qin was startled for a moment before revealing a bit of awkwardness. Could it be that he had been noticed by her just now? Just as he was unsure of how to answer, Hai Lan Lan had already left with a blushing face. Qin let out a breath of relief. He furrowed his eyebrows and immediately laughed. Was he being played by her? He felt that there was something wrong with this matter, but tomorrow was the opening of the main body of the Holy Palace, so he didn't think too much about it. He returned to the quiet cultivation room and closed his eyes to meditate. It would probably take a while for him to become a saint and inherit the position of a saint. However, if he could obtain the status of a saint, he would be able to wield a portion of the power of a saint in advance. Not only could he protect himself, but it would also be of great help to the Holy Netherguard. Although passing through the road of sea burial had caused a great commotion and attracted the attention of the entire demonic path, the only one who truly enjoyed the changes was Hai Lan Lan. Although this girl hadn't said a single word to him, one had to act with one's heart. The Holy Netherguard had given him a tremendous amount of help, and he needed to remember to repay them. Perhaps with his status as the Holy Son, he wouldn't be able to free himself from the imprisonment of the Holy Netherguard. But at the very least, he would be able to bring some people out of the endless sea, or perhaps deliver them a sufficient amount of windletter grass. Qin placed enough importance on the opening of the Holy Palace's main body tomorrow. But he wasn't too worried. Perhaps it was as the demon envoy had said, and the Mu family had made a great deal of preparations. But so what? His Emperor-level demon body had completed its transformation, and he was just a step away from the saint level. In terms of attraction to the Saint Palace, who could compare to him? The Mu family was doomed to tragedy. Deep in the night of the Mu family residence, in a training room deep underground, Mu opened his eyes. A sharp light flashed in them, like an invisible bolt of lightning tearing through the dark void. He stood up, his bones emitting explosive sounds. He could feel the formidable strength contained in his flesh and blood, and a smile lifted the corners of his lips. He was a tenacious and calm person. Ever since he was a child, he had been highly regarded by the clan because of his outstanding demon body talent. But he didn't become arrogant and complacent because of this. Instead, he cultivated even harder. This was because Mu was well aware that he didn't come from a noble background. If it weren't for his demon body talent, it would have been impossible for him to receive the great efforts of the clan. Because of him, his parents and relatives all had extremely high statuses in the clan. But what if he lost that status? He feared that in a single day, his entire family would be beaten back to their roots, and their situation would be even more miserable than when they were lowly and lowly. No matter what aspect he considered it from, Mu couldn't allow himself to fail. He could only work harder and harder, becoming stronger and more outstanding. Originally, everything had been going smoothly. He had even seen the dawn of the Holy Monarch's throne. Once he could ascend to the heavens, he could thoroughly change his destiny. He could laugh proudly between the heavens and earth, looking down on all who stood before him. Yaobin's appearance had been an accident. Mu had felt panic. At that time, when there was no one around, he had avoided countless eyes and curled up into a ball, constantly praying. Perhaps because his piety had moved the heavens, Yaobin had appeared like a meteor and then disappeared like a meteor, exiled to the endless sea. Afterwards, when the clan had attacked, he had learned from Mu Xianglin that Yao Bin had died in the endless sea. On that day, Mu had laughed like a madman. But now, he had actually returned. Mu admitted that he had been flustered for a moment, but he soon calmed down. This was because he now had a sovereign-level demon body. No matter how powerful a white sun boundary was, in just a little over a year, what qualifications did Yao Bin have to compete with him? After tomorrow, with the inheritance on his body, he would be able to soar into the heavens and thoroughly crush Yao Bin. Just like in the past, his obscure and heaven-shaking ancestor had directly achieved the position of Holy Monarch. Moreover, his current hidden cards weren't just the sovereign-level demon body. With a flick of his sleeves, the stone door to the chamber opened. Mu walked out from the darkness, cupping his hands together and bowing. "Uncle." His aura was calm and his eyes firm. Mu Xianglin nodded with satisfaction. "Very good. This is the calmness that I need. As long as you don't panic, tomorrow in this world, there will be a place for you." He lifted a hand and took out a black crystal. "This holy object was bestowed upon you by the old ancestor. If anything goes wrong, it can help you." Mu received the crystal with both hands. Mu Xianglin grabbed his arm and said, Mu, tomorrow in the inheritance of the Holy Palace, there cannot be any mistakes. Do you understand? Uncle, rest assured that your nephew will not disappoint you or the family." At this moment, Mu was in high spirits. Confidence surged in his chest. "I have already achieved the sovereign-level demon body, and I also have a holy object bestowed upon me by the old ancestor. Even if you, Yao Bin, rushed through the heaven-trampling road and sea burial, what qualifications do you have to compete with me? Tomorrow in the future, I will let the people of the world know just who is the true future of the demonic path." The sky was clear and cloudy. The sun was mottled. Qin opened his eyes and let out a light breath. He stood up and stretched his body before pushing open the door. Lan, Tuba, and Tudu were already standing guard outside. They stood up and bowed, not saying much. Not speaking didn't mean they were worried, but that their hearts were already filled with confidence. How could a mere Mu family compare with the Lord Commander? Not to mention Tuba and Tutu, who blindly worshipped him. Even Lan, who had her own principles in her heart. After seeing Qin touch the sea diagram and a pillar of light fall from the heavens, no longer worried about him. "Lord Commander, go early and return early. We will wait here." Tuba and Tutu grinned. Lan said in a soft voice, "I have already ordered people to prepare a banquet." Qin nodded. "I understand." The demon envoy walked over from the side. He thought for a moment and said, "Although it isn't pleasing to the ears, I must remind you that even a lion must use its full strength to capture a rabbit. You cannot be careless." Qin cupped his hands together. "Lord Demon Envoy, please rest assured." His tone was calm and gentle, without much fluctuation. He had always been clear on the difference between confidence and pride. The demon envoy realized this and nodded with satisfaction. "Let's go. When we return, leave a seat for me at the celebratory banquet." With a wave of his sleeves, he wrapped Qin up. With a single step, the two of them vanished without a trace. Today, the location of the Holy Palace had attracted the attention of countless people throughout the demonic path. Everyone was waiting to see just who would be able to leap up and become the focus of the world. Chapter 552. The lofty palace was like an ancient divine palace, and its architectural style was simple without the slightest bit of fancy. Black and white interweaved together, and it seemed to be extremely simple, yet it naturally emitted a supreme, dignified aura. It was like even the 9 blazing suns in the sky had to bow before it. As Qin eyes fell on these palaces, his heart skipped a beat. Excitement, intimacy, and urgency surged out from the depths of his heart. If it weren't for his firm will, he feared he wouldn't have been able to suppress it and would have rushed over. Outside the main building complex of the Holy Palace, There was a terrifying, invisible barrier. Even if a calamity immortal tried to crash into it, they would die without a grave. But at this time, Chinyu had a feeling that this barrier that blocked off the main body of the Holy Palace wouldn't harm him at all. Even if Chinyu's reasoning told him that this feeling was absurd and ridiculous, he still found that he believed it from the depths of his heart. Moreover, he couldn't convince himself to recognize reality. It was like standing on the edge of a cliff. Even though he knew that jumping off meant death, he didn't think there would be any problems and was eager to try. He was going crazy. The demon envoy glanced over. He frowned. "What is it?" Chinyu shook his head, not knowing what to say. If he told the demon envoy what he was feeling right now, wouldn't he be regarded as a madman? Could this be some special divine might of the Holy Palace? But this divine might was far too strange. He warned himself not to be fooled. Chinyu took a deep breath and looked away. The demon envoy slowed his tone. "Don't be nervous. Even if there are no harvests in the Holy Palace today, it isn't a big deal. I will help you obtain demon blood as soon as possible and help you reach the saint level as soon as possible." As he spoke to hear, his eyebrows furrowed imperceptibly. His teacher's words echoed in his mind. As for Yao Bin's true identity, it seemed he would need to hurry up and investigate it. Suddenly, the demon envoy looked into the distance, surprise in his eyes. Sovereign-level demon body. Mu Xianglin also saw the demon envoy and Chinyu. His face was indifferent and his eyes flashed. After today, once Mu Mo became the Holy Sun, nothing could be changed. At that time, the demon envoy's expression would surely be marvelous. Mu Mo bowed towards the demon envoy, but there wasn't the least bit of respect in his eyes. The grudge between the demon envoy and the Mu family was something that only a few great figures of the demonic path knew. But as a strong candidate for the Mu family to compete for the throne of the Holy Monarch, he just happened to know the inside story. What the sacred ancestor could do in the past, he could also do today. Respected Lord Demon Envoy, you are destined to be extremely disappointed. The confrontation between the Mu family and the demon servants was not concealed at all. Ever since that day in the Endless Sea, both sides had shed all pretenses of cordiality. Yao Bin, this is today's greatest opponent, the Mu family Junior Mu. I never imagined that he would have already achieved a sovereign-level demon body. As he spoke, a dignified look appeared on his face. This was something he had never expected. The sovereign-level demon body was already amazing enough. In addition, the Mu family was a descendant of the Holy Lord. Who knew what other cards they had hidden up their sleeves? The fiend attendant began to worry. Although he had advised Chinyu not to worry too much, that was only to reassure him. If Mumu really became the saint's son, then things would inevitably become troublesome. At least, as the son of saint, he had a certain degree of jurisdiction and restraint over the true demon guards. Muamo didn't conceal his tyrannical aura. The Holy Palace suddenly quieted down. Countless great figures had solemn expressions. Those cultivators that wanted to enter the Holy Palace to fight for their good fortune all had stiff expressions. Sovereign-level demon body. He had actually achieved a sovereign-level demon body. How could they compete with him? Many eyes turned to Chinyu, full of regret. So what if he had a white sun boundary talent? In the end, his cultivation time was too short. Chinyu lowered his head, trying to suppress the increasingly intense desire to recklessly rush into the Holy Palace. As this expression fell into the eyes of everyone present, it was a sign of discouragement. Many of the originally depressed cultivators suddenly felt much better. This was because they discovered that Yao Bin was the one who was the saddest right now. Perhaps this was the bad instincts of human nature. As long as there was someone more miserable, it would be easier to accept some sorrowful matters. Dong Hanju frowned. In his understanding, Chinyu wasn't someone that would easily give up. So what if he had a sovereign-level demon body? At most, he would obtain the qualifications to enter the Holy Palace first. His chances of obtaining the inheritances of the Holy Palace were much higher than theirs. But in the end, they still had a chance. As long as they didn't give up, they might be able to obtain some harvests. Looking up at the silent Yao Bin, Dong Hanju's eyebrows furrowed even tighter. A trace of disappointment flashed in his eyes. He had soared into the heavens during the demon body test, rushed through the heaven-trampling road, and was buried in the endless sea. Was it all of this dazzling brilliance that made you arrogant and complacent, unable to tolerate others becoming stronger, unable to withstand setbacks? It had to be known that in this cruel world, if one didn't have a strong heart that was impervious to both praise and humiliation, how could one step onto the peak of the heavens and earth? Yao Bin, I originally regarded you as a goal on my road of cultivation, but now, you have disappointed me far too much. Shaking his head, Dong Hanju looked away, no longer looking at Qinyu. This was because from this moment on, he no longer had the qualifications to be a goal. As for him, Dong Hanju, he would continue forwards, chasing after the limits of strength. The chubby old man curled his lips. He doesn't seem like much today? Disciple, you think too highly of this boy. In terms of temperament, even compared to his disciple, the difference was far too great. Sun Zifu thought for a moment and shook his head. Honorable Master, this disciple believes in his own judgment. Yao Bin isn't someone who can't withstand a blow. He hesitated for a moment. Perhaps what you and I see is only an illusion. The old man humphed. Have you forgotten what your honorable master is best at? This boy's mood is undulating and his muscles and bones are tense. That is absolutely not an act. What a pity. In the last 100,000 years of the demonic path, such a good seedling has appeared. I thought he would have some achievements. Hee, but I fear he will be crippled today. Sun Zifu felt lost. Although his honorable master was a bit unreliable, the words he spoke were absolutely trustworthy. Just what happened? Yao Bin, have you fallen? If Dong Hanju and Sun Zifu could sense something, they naturally couldn't hide it from the eyes of others. Mu Xianglin was overjoyed, and his movements became even calmer. Although Mu Mo had a sovereign-level demon body and also had the holy ancestor's holy object bestowed upon him by the old ancestor, he couldn't help but admit that he was a bit nervous. And the source of this nervousness was Yao Bin, White Sun boundary talent, falling into a land of pill toxins and surviving, rushing through the heaven-trampling road, and that terrifying pillar of light that descended from the heavens, all of these things intertwined together, making him seem even more mysterious and powerful. But now, he was actually panicking and fearful. In today's situation, was there anything more wonderful than this? Mu Xianglin felt relieved. As long as he passed today, what did it matter if Yao Bin had a White Sun boundary talent? He was destined to become Mu Mo's stepping stone. Mu Mo faintly smiled as he looked at Qinyu, a mocking light in his eyes. He absolutely didn't mind putting more pressure on his opponent while he was panicking and panicking. It was just that the opponent he had always feared and worried about, the opponent he viewed as a life or death enemy, was actually such a cowardly coward. This was truly disappointing. Yao Bin was no longer a threat to him. Then, who else could compare with him today? The position of Saint Sun was his. The demon envoy's complexion darkened. He lowered his voice and said, Yao Bin, what happened? Tell me. He was frantic with worry. Everything had been fine before he arrived. So how had he suddenly become like this? Beads of sweat dripped down Qinyu's forehead. He looked up at the demon envoy, his lips moving, but he didn't speak. Damn it. Who could tell him why the moment he saw the holy palace? It was as if he had become addicted to drugs and crazily wanted to rush over. Moreover, what left him speechless was that as he continued to suppress this thought, it became increasingly strong, as if it were gradually tearing apart the shackles of reason. What are you doing? Have you gone crazy? How many tribulations have you endured these past years? Do you really want to play with yourself to death like this? He thought of the possibility that in the future there would be a record of this in the records of the demonic path. On this day, the White Sun boundary demon body disciple, Yao Bin, committed suicide in the barrier of the Holy Palace. The reason is unknown. Qinyu really wanted to reach out and strangle himself to death. Wake up, you bastard. You're going to die. Are you really prepared to end your life in such a tragic and inhumane way? His body began to shiver. More and more cold sweat gushed out from his pores, soaking his robes. As Qin Yu was struggling with all his strength, the demon envoy was also withstanding the crazy assault of an emotion called wanting to cry but having no tears. He thought back to Heavenly Demon City and the excitement he felt when he discovered Qin Yu. He thought back to the day of the demon body talent test and the 10 suns that illuminated the skies. He thought back to the endless sea and the excitement he felt when Qin Yu admitted that the pillar of light that fell from the heavens came from him. He thought back to the excitement he felt when he learned that his middle Emperor Step Demon body had completed its transformation, but no matter how excited he was at that time, he was now filled with despair. Looking at the trembling boy beside him, the demon envoy suspected that he would fall to the ground in the next moment. He wanted to know just what sort of joke the heavens were playing on him. Just this sort of person, and I thought that he could become a saint and inherit the throne of the holy monarch? What a joke, what a joke. Even his own struggles and preparations over the years had all become a joke. There was no longer any meaning to them. The demon envoy took a deep breath and closed his eyes. He didn't want to look at the eyes that were looking at him. Surprise, shock, pity, ridicule. Yes, even he never imagined that he would choose such a top-quality individual. Was what happened in the Demon Ascension Gate's small world true? But now, it seemed that the greater possibility was that Zhao Qianyuan and the others were hallucinating. A loud humming sound came from the Holy Palace's main body. The invisible barrier around it began to appear like tumbling water. Everyone's hearts skipped a beat. It had begun. Muamo smiled. He stretched out his arms, grasping the holy object that the old ancestor had bestowed upon him. The aura of the sovereign-level demon body erupted without reservation. Come, Holy Palace, I am your best choice. Accept me in and obtain the inheritance that will allow you to soar into the heavens. From today onwards, all glory shall be upon me. Whoosh! There was the sound of breaking air. Mumo's smile froze. As he looked at the figure that was hurtling towards the holy palace, his lips twitched. This Yao Bin, was he insane? Did he not know that only after the sacred palace had acknowledged the first person would the rest of the people take the initiative to approach? If he were to fly over now, he would only end up being crushed to smithereens by the barrier outside the Saint Palace. Sure enough, he couldn't even withstand a single blow. He had completely lost control of his mind and actually did such a thing. However, this was also good. Yao Bin's death today would save him a lot of trouble in the future. Then, hurry up and die. Let your blood stain the road beneath my feet. Puff! There seemed to be a light sound in his ears, like a stone falling into a lake. Then, there was nothing. Then, Qin Yu's figure sank into the barrier around the holy palace, vanishing from sight. Outside the holy palace, after a brief moment of astonishment, all sounds disappeared in the next moment. Countless people widened their eyes, revealing a mouthful of good and bad teeth. Yao Guy went in. He went in. He went in just like that. Fear, panic, sweat dripping down, shivering. Everyone was in a trance. Every time these words appeared in their minds, it was like they had been slapped in the face, burning hot. Everyone was speechless. Then a thought appeared in their minds. That surname Yao Guy was too good at pretending. Mumo's arms were stretched out as if he were about to fly away. Unfortunately, Qin Yu didn't give him the chance. Before his feet even left the ground, he ruthlessly kicked back. His chest hurt as if an invisible arrow had pierced through it. But besides his pale complexion, he didn't have any other reaction. I have a sovereign-level demon body. I have the holy relic of the sacred ancestor. How could this be? How could this be? There was a loud rumbling in his mind, as if hundreds of thousands of god beasts were crazily running through him, trampling all of Mu Mo's thoughts to pieces. His entire body turned stiff. Mu Xianglin was also stunned. Before the smile on his face could fade away, his entire body froze. His expression was especially strange, as if he wanted to laugh but ended up crying instead. Dong Hanzhu let out a long breath. reviving from his stupor. He looked at the place where Qin Yu disappeared, his expression changing for a long time. Finally, he bitterly smiled. That fellow Yao Bin, just what was he doing? Playing with everyone. Was there really any meaning in doing this? However, I don't think I value him enough to be able to obtain the approval of the Holy Palace in the blink of an eye, especially in a situation where Mu Mo was present. The meaning behind this is terrifying. Dong Hanju swept his eyes over the stunned Mu family members and silently mourned for them. Then, he took a deep breath and his eyes became firm. Yao Bin, don't think about seeing me lose face. I won't feel embarrassed. I absolutely won't. I absolutely won't. Honorable Master, my eyesight isn't bad. Sun Zifu whispered, a bright smile on his lips. Although he wanted to catch up to him, he was happy from the bottom of his heart. The fat old man's face flushed red. He mumbled something to himself. It wasn't clear, but the general meaning was that this little brat was too good at pretending. He had caused an old man like him to fail miserably in such an easy task, so this matter wasn't over. Sun Zifu helplessly smiled, but he wasn't worried. The more his teacher said this, the less he would take it to heart. However, Yao Bin, the higher you fly, the more difficult it would be to catch up to you. At this moment, there was only one person present. He didn't know just what had happened. Feeling the strange atmosphere around him, the demon envoy roared inwardly. Yao Bin, you brat, if you dare to embarrass yourself again, I will tear you apart on the spot. His eyes flashed open, a sharp light surging within them. Anger burned the heavens. Anyone could clearly feel a terrifying aura that was like a volcano, but he couldn't find a target to vent it on. The demon envoy felt as if he had punched nothing with all his strength. He groaned, and his face turned even paler. He thought back to the sound of breaking air just now. Could it be that bastard Yao Bin had run away? As he thought of this, he wanted to kill someone. Cough. Demon envoy has good eyesight. I admire you. A sound transmission entered his ears. The demon envoy clenched his teeth. Someone dared to openly mock him? This could not be forgiven. It could be expected that the Mu family was destined to enjoy endless glory today, and he would fall into an absolute disadvantage. But the more this was the case, the more he had to maintain his dignity. Otherwise, he would be thoroughly trampled underfoot. But before the demon envoy could take this opportunity to consolidate his authority, he received a second sound transmission. This was from a great figure of the demonic path that was hidden in the shadows. His tone was filled with emotion, and the gist of it was that after today, he hoped that the demon envoy could introduce him to little friend Yao Bin. Then there was a third, a fourth, a fifth. Most of these were congratulatory words and also expressed that they would be closer in the future. The demon envoy was a transcendent, intelligent person. It was only because of a moment of anger that he lost his composure. His thoughts raced, and he discovered that something was wrong. It was as if Yao Bin had suddenly become a delicious cake in everyone's eyes. It had to be known that just a moment ago, everyone was looking at him with disdain. What was going on here? Without batting an eyelid, the demon envoy feigned a few words to understand what had just happened. Yao Bin, this? No, little friend Yao Bin had in the blink of an eye obtained recognition and directly entered the holy palace. The demon envoy looked towards the Mu family. Their mournful expressions entered his eyes, and he let out a long breath. He no longer had any doubts about this matter and was filled with ecstasy and excitement. Of course, the Lord Demon Envoy didn't reveal any of this on the surface. He nodded towards Mu Xianglin in a reserved manner, secretly cursing him for being so arrogant. Yao Bin, how can I say anything to you? Even if you wanted to make these people lose face, for better or worse, you should have told me ahead of time. If it weren't for the fact that my will was strong enough, I fear I would have been scared to death by you. But he couldn't help but admit that this feeling of showing off in front of everyone was truly delightful. Seeing Mu Xianglin's increasingly stiff expression because of his nod, this delightful feeling became even stronger. He really wanted to laugh. No, I have to maintain my composure. I have to act as if everything is under my control. I have to take a part in this powerful show. But, including the demon envoy, No one knew that Qin Yu's decision to enter the Holy Palace wasn't just to slap the Mu family's face and show off his incomparably successful show. Thus, they couldn't understand just how angry and despairing Mu Imo, Mu Xianglin, and the others were feeling right now. The old ancestor had personally stepped forward and paid a tremendous price to open up the inner link of the Holy Palace. As long as Mu Imo entered the Holy Palace first, everything would be settled. But who would have thought that even though they had made incomparably ample preparations, and the old ancestor had even bestowed a holy artifact to the sacred ancestor, the link that they thought was foolproof would actually be crushed to pieces. Today, the one that Qin Yu had kicked away wasn't just Mu Imo, but the future hope of the entire Mu family. Chapter 553. Disregarding how amazed the people outside were, or what they were thinking, Qin Yu was well aware that he hadn't rushed out as soon as the barrier opened. He had clearly been forcefully dragged in. Before he could regain his composure, he had already crashed into the barrier outside the Holy Palace and arrived in this spacious square. Although he was confident in his abilities and didn't view the Mu family as a threat, Qin Yu had always been cautious. He had naturally done some research into the opening of the main body of the Holy Palace. If he wasn't wrong, then where he was now was the great square in front of Heavenweight Temple. This was the starting point of the Holy Palace's inheritance test. In other words, everyone that was allowed to enter the Holy Palace today would arrive here first and then disperse to find their own lucky chances. But this was far too strange. Qin Yu feared that he had fallen into a trap, so he stood motionless. He carefully sensed his surroundings and looked around many times before he was finally able to determine that this was really the Heavenweight Grand Square. Qin Yu slapped his forehead, feeling that his brain wasn't enough. Wasn't it said that one needed to display their sharpness in front of the Holy Palace and obtain the most approval to enter the palace first? How come things were so chaotic when it came to him? Thinking about it carefully, this didn't seem like he needed to go through a test, but was simply too impatient. It wasn't just him who couldn't restrain his impulses, but the Holy Palace was also the same. As soon as he opened the door, they had pulled him in without any reservation. Even if he didn't know what was happening outside, he could imagine that everyone's expressions would be very interesting. As for the Mu family that had prepared so much that even the demon envoy felt uneasy, they would likely be filled with despair after their initial shock. Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed his chaotic thoughts. His eyes fell on the center of the square where a black stone tablet had been placed. He couldn't tell what material it was made of, but as he looked at it, his heart began to race. But as far as he knew, there shouldn't be such a thing in the Heavenweight Grand Square. Then, what was this black stone tablet? There were 4 more dark green beads in the dark hall, but they didn't brighten the place at all. Instead, there was a cold and gloomy air about it. Yu Qi thought about the beads on her head and how they had been refined by burning the lives of 4 people. Her face paled even more, but she concealed all of this well. She only revealed the respect and fear she should have, without any other emotions. But even if she didn't make any mistakes, how long would the days of safety last? But in this purgatory, there was nowhere to run. Yu Qi could only endure and pray that before the great calamity arrived, she would be able to find a slim chance of survival. If that was not possible, she could only risk it all. Even if she died, she would at least knock out a few teeth of this old witch. This mentality of if you don't let me live, I won't let you live should have been infected by that bastard. Yu Qi couldn't help but grind her teeth when she thought about how she ended up like this mostly because of that boy. The land of divinity and demons wasn't some abandoned land. That decadent, exiled world couldn't compare with it. With Qin Yu's personality that refused to suffer losses, it was hard to say just how badly he would be bullied. Thinking of this, Yu Qi felt much more at ease. Under the cover of the black robe, her eyes revealed a faint warmth. I'm afraid I won't be able to see you again in this life. You bastard brat, I hope your luck is good. If you end up in the demonic path someday, you might have a chance to take revenge for me. This was because she was well aware that even if she knocked out a few of this old witch's teeth, she would still die. Aha, it's about to begin. Let us sisters take a look and see just which boy has obtained the great gift we have prepared for him. The black-robed figure gently said from the high throne. He lifted a hand, and the dark green beads embedded in the ceiling began to fuse together in the air, turning into a dim curtain of light. What was displayed on this curtain of light was the situation at Skyrise Plaza. The black-robed figure looked at the black stone tablet and sighed with emotion. Although this stone tablet inheritance wasn't the most powerful in the Holy Palace, it was one of the most beneficial to the cultivation of the demon body. She had spent a great deal of effort to move it out, but all of this was worth it. Once the Mu family obtained these benefits, they would fulfill their agreement to help her obtain a new life. The black-robed figure inadvertently swept his eyes over Yu Qi, his gaze becoming increasingly gentle. Suddenly, a fluctuation appeared on the curtain of light. This was because the barrier of the Holy Palace had opened. The black-robed figure paused for a moment before sighing inwardly. No wonder the Mu family was so confident that they weren't afraid of others taking the lead. Their juniors had actually produced such a Kirin child. In the blink of an eye, he had obtained the approval of the Holy Palace. This was truly extraordinary. She let out a sigh of relief. This was for the best. Otherwise, if something went wrong, there would be more trouble. Then, the scene changed again. A figure appeared out of thin air in the Skyrise Plaza. This person didn't seem to think that he would obtain the approval of the Holy Palace so quickly. He stood in place, not moving. Bang! There was a dull thud from the high throne, and the entire hall trembled. The black-robed figure was sitting on the throne, her heart filled with joy and excitement. At this time, she glared at the figure on the curtain of light. Anyone could feel the anger in her heart. The reason was simple. The person who appeared wasn't the Mu family junior that they had agreed on. Bastard. Mu Yunli was truly becoming more and more useless the longer he lived. He had actually messed up such a simple matter. Everything was ready, and they were only waiting for the final step, but someone had beaten them to it. But no matter how angry she was, she couldn't allow such a thing to happen. Otherwise, if the Mu family had obtained nothing, how could they possibly keep their promise? All of you leave. His voice was filled with warmth and tenderness, but now it was completely gone. Instead, it was replaced by a chill. The pitiful group of people in the hall all realized that something was wrong. They didn't dare to say a single word more. They turned and left. Yu Qi bowed. She tried her best to maintain her composure, not showing any signs of retreating. But in the lake of her heart, great waves had already been set off. She blinked her eyes several times to prevent tears from flowing down. Qinyu. It was Qinyu. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't have recognized him. But Yu Qi and Qinyu knew each other from the start, so she naturally wouldn't be mistaken. Perhaps their appearances were similar, but there were some traces in their actions that couldn't be imitated. Just a moment ago, she had thought of Qinyu, but now he had appeared in front of her. If it weren't for her temperament having been tempered over the years, she feared she would have lost her composure the first time she saw him. Qinyu had arrived, and he was in this tomb of the living dead. Yu Qi naturally knew what time it was today, but no matter how much she imagined it, she couldn't believe that the Qinyu who had been struggling to survive when they separated in the past would now have the qualifications to openly step into the Holy Palace. In particular, he was the first person to enter the Holy Palace. The meaning behind this made her feel as if she were dreaming. But soon after, Yu Qi began to worry. In order to protect herself these past years, she had tried her best to figure out the old witch's character. She had always been incomparably hypocritical. Even several days ago, when she burned those 4 people to death, she still spoke in such a gentle and helpless tone. It could be seen that she was truly angry today. After the Holy Palace was sealed off, there was only a group of pitiful people left. But the old witch's status was extraordinary, and it was unknown what method she had used to retain a certain level of authority. If she wanted to deal with Qinyu, what would she do? Yu Qi's heart burned with anxiety. But she knew that she hadn't warned him at all. If she revealed anything, she would only be harming herself for nothing. Walking out of the hall, everyone was waiting outside. Those covetous eyes swept over them, but Yuchi was too worried to care about them. A moment later, there was an angry roar from deep within the hall, a sharp cry like the wailing of evil spirits. The group of people outside the hall who hadn't died, yet all shivered. Only Yuchi revealed a look of pleasant surprise. Chinyu was fine. He was fine. Sky Tribute Plaza. Chinyu frowned, his complexion a bit ugly. Ripples suddenly appeared in the space around the stone tablet, as if they wanted to swallow it up. Although he didn't know what the black stone tablet was, his intuition told him that he couldn't stand idly by and watch. But there were many taboos in the Holy Palace. If he wasn't careful, it was possible that he would place himself in danger. In a flash, an idea popped up in Chinyu's mind. Without any time to consider it, he erupted the complete aura of his Emperor-level demon body without reservation. In that instant, his blood vitality began to boil and his robes fluttered. His aura was truly heaven-shaking. Even his body grew several inches in the air, making him seem like a great emperor himself. Sure enough, this move was useful. The stone tablet seemed to be attracted by the aura of the Emperor-level demon body. It gently trembled, resisting the swallowing force of the spatial fluctuations. The two sides formed a tug-of-war. Because there was a connection between them, Chinyu could sense that this black stone tablet was filled with an inexplicable majestic aura that caused his heart to race. Inheritance. This stone tablet was an inheritance, and it was incomparably powerful. At this moment, Chinyu thought of the Mu family. The demon envoy had said that they were secretly making a big move, but because it was too secretive, he hadn't been able to investigate it. Could it be related to this black stone tablet? This thought flashed through Chinyu's mind. Whether or not it was related to the Mu family, since they had placed this stone tablet in front of him, there was no reason for him to take it back. He took a step forwards, and the blue stone beneath his feet instantly shattered. The entire plaza shook and rumbled. The Saint Sun armor automatically appeared on Chinyu's body, and a powerful aura rose up. The demon body was the highest tempering method of the demonic path. But in the end, if it was used in combat, not only would it allow one to advance by leaps and bounds, but it would also be extremely tyrannical in battle. The stronger the enemy, the stronger one would be. As his first step fell, Chinyu didn't pause at all. He immediately took a second step. His blood vitality tumbled even more violently, and blue blood vessels bulged on his forehead. Third step, fourth step, fifth step. With loud bangs, the distance between him and the black stone tablet grew smaller and smaller. His aura rose again, and demonic energy appeared above his head, condensing into a giant demon head. It was as illusory as fog, and its eyes were closed, as if it could be blown away by a gust of wind. But as Chinyu took his seventh step, the demon head completely condensed. Its eyes opened, and two bolts of lightning seemed to tear through the fog in the skies. The space around the black stone tablet suddenly stiffened and then collapsed. Faintly, he could hear a pained and resentful scream in his ears. Chinyu stopped. The wild blood vitality within his body slowly calmed down. With the crackling of his bones, he returned to his original height. Then he stuffily coughed, and blood flowed out from his nose and mouth. The demon body became stronger the stronger it was, but that didn't mean it had no limits. Rather, it was some sort of secret technique that overdrew one's strength. If one used strength that surpassed their limits, they would have to suffer a backlash. Chinyu looked up and saw the dissipating demon head. A trace of understanding appeared in his heart. The Holy Emperor Palace was the residence of the Holy Emperor Palace Master, and the only condition to become a saint sovereign was to have a saint-step demon body. Although he was only an emperor right now, he could just barely summon the saint's sovereign demonic energy contained within the Holy Emperor Palace and condense it into this demon head. If it weren't for this, then not only would he not have been able to seize the stone tablet today, but he would have suffered severe wounds because of his impulsive actions. That scream, just now, was extremely illusory, but because Chinyu had the cosmic sea-cross bell, he could clearly sense the hatred and unwillingness contained within. Just who was it that wanted to take away the stone tablet? His eyes darkened. After a long time, Chinyu took a deep breath and wiped the blood from his nose and mouth. He stepped in front of the black stone tablet and pressed his hand against it. The moment Chinyu's hand touched the black stone tablet, several figures appeared in the air. Two of them were Mu Mo and Dong Hanju. The former could clearly see Chinyu's hand pressing against the black stone tablet. His eyes widened, and he screamed, "No!" He rushed forwards like a crazed demon. But before Mu Mo could approach, a halo of black and purple light erupted and sent him flying away. As he flew through the air, he vomited great mouthfuls of blood. When it landed on the ground, it smashed the blue stone on the ground and plowed through the ground. It slid backwards with a rumbling sound. Even so, Mumo's eyes didn't leave Chinyu at all. As he watched the halo of black and purple light become increasingly thick, gradually submerging him within, his eyes filled with hatred and despair. This was his. This should have been his. It was over. Everything was over. Dong Hanju's pupils violently shrank. He came from a noble family of the Dong family and had an extremely high status within the demonic path, so he naturally had a corresponding level of vision. It was clear that Yao Bin had obtained some formidable inheritance not too long after entering the Holy Emperor Palace. This halo of black and purple light and such a boundless aura. Could it be? Dong Hanju pursed his lips. Even though he had a strong will, he still felt a bit stunned at this moment. Yao Bin had already left everyone else in the dust. If things were really as he thought, how could he chase after him in the future? Mu Mo thrust his hands into the ground. Disregarding the blood dripping from his fingers, he forced himself to stop. His hair was disheveled as he jumped up. Everyone, Yao Bin has obtained the Saint Sovereign's inheritance, and he hasn't fused it yet. If anyone can seize it, they can soar into the heavens. Everyone was startled. They didn't have the mind to think about how Mu Mo knew of this. Their eyes began to blaze with heat. The Saint Sovereign's inheritance. This was the Saint Sovereign's inheritance. Even if they knew that Mu Mo was planning on taking advantage of this opportunity to stir up the waters, no one could resist this temptation. If it were just one or two people, with Chinyu's fame, no one would dare to attack him. But now, more and more people gathered in the square. If everyone attacked together, no matter how fierce this surname Yao was, he absolutely wouldn't be able to stop them. If they were lucky, they could seize the inheritance and change their destiny. Mu Mo anxiously roared out, "Everyone, do not hesitate. Once the inheritance is fused together, you and I will no longer have a chance." Before his voice fell, the incomparably majestic halo of black and purple light began to collapse. In the blink of an eye, it completely vanished, revealing Chinyu's figure. Shua, his eyes flashed open. Within his pitch-black pupils, thousands of bolts of thunder seemed to appear. A brilliant pressure swept out, blotting out the skies. Mumo's body stiffened. His mouth was open, but he couldn't breathe. He was like a fish thrown ashore, his eyes filled with despair. The inheritance had returned. No chance at all. His eyes swiveled. The blood vessels on the surface rapidly swelled, turning a horrifying blood-red color. Yao Bin, I will kill you." With a shrill scream, a layer of white flames ignited on the surface of Mumo's body. Although it seemed icy cold, it actually contained an unimaginably terrifying heat. Space violently twisted. Chinyu had an indifferent expression. He looked at the crazily rushing Mu Mo. He lifted a hand and pressed forwards. A giant hand suddenly appeared in the void, pressing him down. With a loud bang, a giant palm print appeared on the ground. Mu Mo lay there, blood gushing out from his body. In the blink of an eye, his robes were soaked and the ground beneath him was dyed red. The white flames around him had already been extinguished. "Kill me? Do you want to die?" His voice was calm, but as each syllable fell into the ears, it gave off an endlessly dignified feeling. It was like a god sitting high above the highest heavens, able to kill with a single thought. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Above the holy palace, thousands of bolts of thunder appeared in the skies. They pierced through the skies, radiating light for 100,000 miles. Billowing waves of sound reverberated through the highest heavens to congratulate the Supreme. The position of Saint's son had been settled. From this day forth, this grand palace that had been empty for 100,000 years would finally welcome half a master. In the Sky Reverence Grand Square, everyone's complexions were pale, and a deep sense of powerlessness rose in their eyes. They had wanted to take advantage of this chance, but they never imagined that before they could do anything, everything had already ended. Faint traces of black and purple light appeared once more. They flew out from the square beneath their feet, from the surrounding palaces, from every corner of the Holy Palace, gathering onto Qin Yu's body. They condensed into a noble and magnificent robe that exuded an unparalleled majesty. Every rune on this robe seemed to contain some supreme truth of the heavens and earth. Just by standing there, the rules were twisted and everyone bowed in worship. Although Saint Sun was famous, he wasn't unique. Those that made great contributions to the demonic path also had a chance to obtain rewards. But there were only two sets of saint robes in the demonic path. One was called the Great Saint Robe and was used by the Holy Monarch. The other was called the Minor Saint Robe and was owned by His Highness the Saint Sun. With the Minor Saint Robe on his body, there was no need for anyone to confer him a title or recognize him. From this moment onwards, Qin Yu was the only Saint Son of the demonic path. His position was supreme and revered. In theory, when the seat of the Holy Monarch was empty, Qin Yu would be the person with the highest status in the demonic path. The rules twisted and space trembled. Qin Yu felt as if he were immersed in fog, making him appear even more dignified. He slowly swept his eyes around. Wherever he passed, the complexions of everyone changed. Of those that had the qualifications to enter the Holy Palace today, none of them were mediocre. It was inevitable for them to be proud and arrogant, but beneath Qin Yu's gaze, they had no choice but to lower their heads. "Do you also want to kill me?" These words were as heavy as Mount Tai. No one dared to withstand them. Puff! "Greetings, Your Highness." The first person bowed, followed by a second and a third. Dong Hanju's eyes revealed a pained struggle. But as he swept his eyes over Qin Yu's icy cold face, he knew that he had to establish his prestige today. If he offended him, even if they were old acquaintances, he wouldn't show mercy. He took a deep breath and fell to his knees, lowering his head. Although he was unwilling, he didn't feel any resentment. This was because Dong Hanju was well aware that if their statuses were reversed, he would do the same today. This kneel shattered the last bit of determination in the hearts of the last few people. Even Dong Hanju had bowed his head, so what qualifications did they have to resist Qin Yu? Only Muemo was left lying on the ground in a palm print. His entire face was ashen white, like a piece of rotten wood that had lost its vitality. Even though Qin Yu's heart was strong enough, he still felt a surge of emotions. Ever since he stepped into the land of divinity and demons, he had escaped death countless times. But after today, with his status as the demonic path's Holy Palace Saint Son, no one in the entire land of divinity and demons could easily control his life or death. This wasn't an increase in strength, but a change in status. But comparatively speaking, becoming the Holy Palace's Holy Son was far more difficult than breaking into the Calamity immortal realm. Looking at the demonic path's 100,000 years, just how many Calamity immortals had there been? As for the Holy Son, there was only Qin Yu. Outside the Holy Palace, Mu Xianglin's face was deathly pale, but his back was straight as he stared straight at the Holy Palace. Although Yao Bin was the first person to enter, he faintly knew the arrangements of the old ancestor. That person in the Holy Palace would never allow him to easily obtain the inheritance. Muemo still had a chance. He still had a chance. Suddenly, thunder exploded in the skies. With a loud rumble, the sound surged in all directions. Mu Xianglin's body trembled. He looked up at the thunder and the auspicious clouds that appeared out of nowhere. Awe instinctively rose up in his heart, and his lips trembled. The seat of the Holy Sun had already been claimed. Muamo had only been in the Holy Palace for several breaths of time, and then his field of vision darkened. Mu Xianglin bit his lips and forcefully endured it. The dust hadn't settled yet. He hadn't. With a sovereign-level demon body and with the Holy Ancestor's holy artifact in his hands, how could Muamo not have the strength to fight back? He was in a trance for an unknown period of time. Then, the barrier around the Holy Palace parted like a tide, revealing a channel. This was a true opening. Compared to when everyone was allowed to enter, this represented a completely different meaning. Even though they knew that the seat of the Holy Sun had already been decided, there was still a loud gasp outside the Holy Palace. Many great figures of the demonic path felt their hearts tremble. Opening the barrier of the Holy Palace, this was a privilege that belonged exclusively to the Holy Monarch. The Holy Sun wasn't a Holy Monarch yet, but he could wield a portion of this power ahead of time. They suddenly realized that from today onwards, the heavens of the demonic path had changed. Perhaps today's Holy Sun was still weak, but he already had the qualifications to establish himself within the demonic path. The demonic path disciples that entered the Holy Palace divided into two lines and walked out through the crack. They respectfully stood outside the Holy Palace with their hands hanging down. Two people still hadn't appeared. One was Qin Yu, and the other was Mu Xianglin lifted a hand to wipe away the blood from the corners of his lips. His face flushed red, but before he could touch his hand, a figure stepped out from the crack in the barrier. The divine light of the little saint robe was dazzling and dazzling. Wherever it passed, space twisted, but one could still make out the figure within. It wasn't Mu. This thought was like a blade splitting apart his brain, a pain that pierced into his heart and shattered all his perseverance. Mu Xianglin spat out a mouthful of blood and fell backwards. The demon attendant's eyes were filled with disbelief. There was a pleasant surprise that came too quickly, a pressure that his heart couldn't bear. But in the end, he was still a demon attendant. He had gone through countless trials and tribulations to reach the peak of the demonic path. He took a deep breath and suppressed all the fluctuations in his heart. He stepped forward and bowed. Demon attendant, and Yang greets your Highness Holy Sun. His voice traveled in all directions. Within Yang's identity and experience in the demonic Tao, he did not need to lower his head, even in front of Saint. But today's bow was indispensable. He wanted to use this bow to announce to the entire demonic path that the Saint's Son was above all else. If even the dignified Lord Demon Envoy bowed to him, then who had the qualifications to act all high and mighty in front of the Saint's Son? After a brief silence, the noise outside the sacred palace was like a tidal wave. Greetings, Your Highness. Chapter 554. In the luxuriously decorated study, the few of them sat on the sofa and quietly flipped through the books in their hands. From time to time, they would turn their heads and whisper a few words. The atmosphere was gentle and tranquil. Although the master of the study had a high status, he did not like to meddle in mundane affairs. He immersed himself in ancient characters all day long. In addition, he treated people with a gentle attitude and did not put on airs, so he was quite popular in the demonic path. However, not long after the master of the study sat down on the sofa, his brows suddenly furrowed. A complicated look flashed across his calm eyes, but it soon became gentle again. He put down the book and marked it down. Then he clapped his hands. Everyone, my apologies. I have some matters to attend to, so I won't be accompanying you any longer. Everyone nodded, and Room Masterby left. There were 2 blue sea cultivators among them, and their smiles were quite natural. It was clear that they didn't care too much about their status when interacting with others. House Masterby was by Xin Yuan's nickname. He liked it very much and had always called himself that. He cupped his fists at the crowd and returned the book to its original place before turning around and walking out. Masterby is a gentle gentleman. He treats people extremely well. It's just that he only has one son. He's a bit of a good-for-nothing. I'm afraid he's gotten himself into trouble again today. An old friend shook his head and said with some regret. Everyone nodded their heads in agreement. However, since it involved the private affairs of important figures, after a few words, they didn't mention it again. Although Room Master White had left his study, his calamity immortal realm cultivation was still present. As he heard the conversation behind him, his footsteps slowed and a bit of guilt appeared in his eyes. But in the blink of an eye, he regained his composure. He ordered that no one was to disturb him and strode into the still thought hall. There were some things that had already been decided many years ago. He had no choice. The aftermath of the Son of Saint's ascension was still fermenting in the demonic path. It seemed calm on the surface, but there were already turbulent waves in the dark. The lords all made their moves to deal with the changes. Thus, for these past several days, the demon attendant had become the busiest person. He helped Qin Yu sort out all sorts of relationships and arrange private meetings according to the degree of importance. Fortunately, this was the first time they met, so it was only a preliminary impression. It was to pave the way for the future, so there was no need to waste too much time. 4 or 5 days later, Qin Yu was finally able to relax. But the demon envoy was even busier than before. There were many follow-up matters that required his attention. On this day, the demon attendant hurried over to discuss the fiefdom with Qin Yu. After finalizing the details, he stood up and bid his farewells. But before he left, he turned back. There is something that I thought with your current status you wouldn't need to worry about, but I never thought it would still be resolved today. When he first entered the demonic path, Qin Yu was given a mountain peak residence. Not long after he entered the endless sea, someone took a fancy to this residence and thought of a way to occupy it. Because the person who attacked had a considerable background and Qin Yu's situation was unknown, this matter was suppressed and treated as if it hadn't happened. Seeing Qin Yu's complexion turn ugly, the demon envoy explained, "When you left the endless sea, the holy palace was about to open, so I didn't tell you. I thought that once you returned, they would naturally retreat. This matter was indeed my negligence." Qin Yu shook his head. "It has nothing to do with you. But do those people still occupy my courtyard?" The demon envoy nodded. He hesitated for a moment and said, "He is just an ignorant junior. He has been spoiled since he was a child. His father has many friends in the demonic path. If there isn't any major problem, then just punish him a bit." "I understand." As he watched the demon envoy leave, Qin Yu narrowed his eyes. He didn't care about a courtyard, but Duan-san, and Duan-ji were still there. It was best if nothing happened to them. After thinking for a moment, he stood up and walked out the door. When he saw Hai Lan Lan, she bowed and said, "Your Highness, Lord Demon Envoy has asked me to follow you." Qin Yu looked at her expression and knew what was going on. He smiled and said, "I don't care about the courtyard, but there are 2 people left there. I need to bring them back." Hai Lan Lan relaxed a little. "That's simple. Your Highness has a high status, so you could just send someone over. There is no need for you to personally make a trip. That would be a waste of your status." Qin Yu thought for a moment. "That's true. Arrange for Duan-san, and Duan-ji to come back. But you need to watch them carefully so that they don't suffer any losses." Hai Lan Lan smiled and nodded. As she saw Qin Yu turn and leave, there was a bit more appreciation in her eyes. Those who wanted to achieve great things didn't bother with trifles. His Highness was currently trying to win over the hearts of the people, so it wasn't good to stir up trouble over such a small matter. Otherwise, it would give off a bad impression that the newly promoted Saint's son was narrow-minded. As for bringing them back, in Hai Lan Lan's opinion, Qin Yu being willing to abandon the courtyard and not pursue the matter was already a great show of tolerance. As long as the other party had a brain, they wouldn't refuse. But as she thought about it, this was His Highness's private matter, and it wasn't good to assign the demon envoy to his subordinates, lest too many people spread it out. Thus, she asked Tutu to step in. She thought that this matter would end here, but after 2 days, Tutu still hadn't returned. Hai Lan Lan felt that something wasn't right. After she had someone investigate, her face turned white with anger. Tutu hadn't brought anyone back. Instead, He had been captured and imprisoned in a large residence at the summit of a mountain. "Your Highness, this is all my fault. I didn't think things through and caused you to lose face." Hai Lan Lan fell to her knees. "I ask your Highness to punish me." Qin Yu waved his hand. "It has nothing to do with you." He narrowed his eyes. "I want to see just what sort of secrets are hidden in this matter." When he broke out of the endless sea, there might have been people who maintained their status. But today he was the demonic path Saint Sun, and there were still people who dare to do this. One didn't need to be a genius to know that there was a problem. When Tubal learned of his brother's situation, he had a gloomy expression. Without a word, he ordered the true demon guards under his command. Qin Yu had used his status as the Saint's son to give him the position of commander. For the time being, the subordinates would be provided by the demon envoy. A large speed car left the holy palace, breaking through the skies. Hai Lan Lan hesitated again and again. Then she said in a soft voice, "Your Highness, this matter might be a plot. You must endure it and not fall into the schemes of others." Qin Yu closed his eyes. "I know what I'm doing." On that day, the demon envoy had bowed in front of everyone, giving him face. But in the end, he could only fight for something like face. If this really was a trap, then no matter what, Qin Yu guaranteed that he would make the person who said it pay the price. Knowing that His Highness the Saint's son was in a bad mood, the true demon guard drove the speed car as fast as he could. He didn't care about energy consumption, and in just half a day, they arrived at the peak of Building Manor. The new Saint's son had sent people to take away his old servant, but instead he had been imprisoned and suppressed. It was unknown where this news had come from, but the cultivators living on the mountain were already aware of it. They were all nervously waiting in anticipation. When the large speed car stopped and a group of true demon guards walked out, Qin Yu stepped out. Countless people revealed excited expressions. The news spread at an astonishing speed. The Saint's son had personally come to denounce them. In the mansion at the peak of the mountain, a beam of light shot out from the 9 mirrors in the air. They wove together to form a cage, and runes constantly swam on the surface of each pillar. Tutu was imprisoned within. His body was curled up, and if it weren't for his chest rising and falling, he would have looked dead. Several youths had uncertain complexions. As they looked at the large man in the cage, it was unknown what they were thinking. They had been having fun yesterday, and then this person had suddenly come to ask for someone. Originally, this shouldn't have been a major matter, but for some unknown reason, they had been stirred up. The medicinal efficacy was exploding within their bodies, and the group of youths were all excited to the extreme. They stimulated the array formation and beat this person up. But once the medicinal efficacy passed and they figured out this person's identity, all of them regretted it so much that they wanted to smash their heads against a wall. They had actually beaten up someone who was the new Saint's son? No matter how tyrannical Bai Cheesy was by relying on his father's status, he was now numb. Under the persuasion of his group of scoundrels, he trembled and told his father what had happened. He thought that when he wanted to retreat, it was his father who told him it was fine. But now that he had stirred up trouble, he had to bear the responsibility for him. The reply he obtained left Bai Cheesy and the others overjoyed. It turned out that the high-level figures were in a battle of magic, trying to create an opportunity to force the Saint's son to make concessions in certain areas. They were only one of the links. No wonder such a low-key person like my father would allow me to do things like this. Bai Cheesy calmed down. It was just that as he thought about his father's private instructions, he felt a bit restless. It had to be known that the one he was facing now was the demonic path's Saint's son. Was it really all right to do things like this? The demon envoy frowned. He waved his hand, indicating that there was no need to add more tea. He lightly said, "If Mr. Mu is busy today, I will come visit another day." He stood up and was about to leave when the door opened from the outside. The Mu family old ancestor walked in with a smile. "I'm getting on in years and suddenly thought of something important. I apologize for making the demon envoy wait for so long." Mu Yuantai stood up and bowed. "Old ancestor." The Mu family old ancestor waved his hand. "I will entertain the demon envoy. You may leave." Mu Yuantai respectfully nodded. He coldly glanced at the demon envoy and then left. And Yang, it's been a long time since I've chatted with you. Please sit. The demon envoy was silent for a moment. He calmly sat down. The Mu family old ancestor had an extremely high status, so he had to take some face into consideration. I've already drunk quite a bit of tea. If I continue to beat around the bush, I fear you'll be angry. So, let's get straight to the point. The Mu family old ancestor smiled. What do you want so that you won't stand idly by? The demon envoy lightly said, What does Mr. Mu mean? And Yang, there is no need to hide anything between us. This old man can give you a final condition. I hope you can carefully consider it. The Mu family old ancestor lifted a hand and pointed downwards. In that instant, space froze, isolating this place from the outside world. If Mu Mo ascends to the holy monarch position, the Mu family will only need 10,000 years before passing the holy monarch position to you. For this matter, the Mu family can sign a demon contract with you. We will absolutely not go back on our word. The demon envoy's complexion changed. He never expected that the Mu family would actually put forth such a condition. It had to be known that a demon contract had an extremely strong restrictive effect. Once it was signed, he was confident that the Mu family wouldn't be able to move against him, and he even had a guarantee that no accidents would occur during the duration of the contract. At this moment, his heart was indeed moved, but it was only for a moment before his eyes turned cold. Mr. Mu, if there is nothing else, then I will bid my farewells. If the Mu family's contract could be trusted, how could the old ancestor end up in such a miserable state in the past? Did the Mu family old ancestor really think that he didn't know what happened in the past? The Mu family old ancestor said in a low voice, And Yang, I know that you are filled with hostility towards the Mu family, but I need to tell you that there is a hidden story behind what happened in the past. You cannot blame all of it on my elder brother. The demon envoy's complexion changed. He had asked his teacher about this, but hadn't obtained a definite response. He was extremely curious about what happened in the past. Just what sort of amazing talent was the old ancestor? His strength was extraordinary, and his position as the holy monarch was already in the bag. So how could he suddenly die in a single night? With the Mu family's strength in the past, it was nearly impossible for them to accomplish such a thing. Sit down. I will tell you the truth. I hope that after you know it, you can change your mind. Although the Mu family has wronged the family, they are not your enemy. The Saint Sun had arrived. The mountaintop residence was instantly thrown into chaos. The servants had long since returned to their rooms. The group of cultivators that were guarding the residence paled and gulped. Brother White, what do we do? The Saint Sun has an honorable status. If he wants to deal with us, no one can stop him. A young cultivator said with a trembling voice. His body, which had become thin due to taking drugs for fun, was shaking so much that it almost resembled a sieve. The people around him were also panic-stricken. This surname, White had a calamity, immortal realm father, and a great mountain backing him, but they didn't have this sort of background. If there was a conflict today and the Saint Sun vented his anger on them, they feared that no one would say a single word for them, even if they died. Brother White, we are wise men who know when the odds are against us. Let's release this person first. I don't think the Saint Sun will make things difficult for us. That's right. I asked clearly. Yesterday, this person came to take away those 2 old servants and didn't mention taking back the residence. If it weren't for the woman's face being painted, there wouldn't have been such a ruckus. I think that His Highness the Saint Sun has given old White face. It wouldn't be shameful for us to lower our heads now. Making things difficult for the Saint Sun can be a big or small matter. If things get out of hand, we will also be in trouble. Brother White, you should consider this carefully. Baichizi took a deep breath and calmly said, Fellow brothers, there is no need to worry. I have already secretly transferred this residence to my name. I have also taken away those 2 cheap servants. If we carefully consider this matter, His Highness the Saint Sun won't be able to say anything. Moreover, the Saint Sun is currently trying to win over the hearts of the people, so how could he make things difficult for us over such a minor matter? As everyone saw him speak in such a relaxed manner, they calmed down a little. They immediately thought about how this old man was at the Calamity immortal realm. Perhaps he had secretly received instructions from someone else, so he wasn't afraid at all. In any case, they were just accomplices at most. If Baichizi wasn't afraid, then what were they afraid of? Gritting their teeth, the group of debauches finally calmed down. However, before they could even take 2 breaths, a loud boom sound came from the front yard. The ground trembled a few times. Seeing the true demon guards rushing over, their legs began to tremble again. Baichizi roared out, "Who dares to act so wildly in my residence? You must be tired of living." With his Calamity immortal father backing him, others might fear the true demon guards, but he didn't fear them at all. Moreover, with things having come this far, even if he pierced through the heavens, he would still have the support of this old man. In the future, just thinking about provoking the Saint Son would make him feel awe-inspiring. There were countless young masters in the demonic path, but none of them were as fierce as this old man. When he went out in the future, he wanted to see just who would dare to be arrogant in front of him. As he thought of this, the restlessness in his heart scattered, turning into excitement. His shout was filled with momentum. The frightened young masters all looked at him with admiration. They thought that they had underestimated this surname by before. To have a Calamity immortal father like him, he was amazing. These little gazes left Baichizi feeling refreshed. His aura became even sharper and fiercer. "Come, what bullshit, Saint Son? If it were not too long ago, you wouldn't even be fit to carry my shoes." Chinyu appeared under these gazes. He didn't look at the heaven-exploding young master Bai. Instead, his eyes fell onto Tutu in the cage, and he frowned. Tuba's face was filled with killing intent. If he weren't worried about provoking trouble for His Highness, he would have already rushed forwards and pulled out this bastard's head and stomped on it. "This is one of my people. Why are you imprisoning him?" Baichizi frowned. "Who are you?" Then he suddenly realized, "Your Highness, Saint Son, I never thought that you would come to my dwelling. Your presence really brings light to my humble dwelling." Chinyu's eyes were indifferent. "Answer my question." Baichizi's exaggerated smile stiffened and his tone dimmed. "Since your Highness Saint Son has asked, how could I not answer? This brute broke in yesterday to ask for someone and inexplicably came into conflict with us. It really is a misunderstanding. Since he is a subordinate of the Saint Son, why haven't you come and let him go?" The cage twisted and dissipated. Tuba rushed out and grabbed onto Tudu. As he inspected him, his eyes turned red. These bastards had dealt a heavy blow, and many of his bones had been broken. Luckily, his life wasn't in any danger. Perhaps because it affected his internal injuries, Tutu stuffily coughed and opened his eyes. He was startled for a moment before revealing a look of shame. "Your Highness, I have lost face for you." Chinyu lifted a hand. "Take him away to rest." He turned and said, "There are 2 more people." Baichizi clenched his teeth. "Bring them to your Highness." Duan-sen was better off. He was just a bit pale. As for Duan-jiu, she was carried out. As she lay on a stretcher, it was as if she didn't hear anything that was happening around her. Half her face was covered with scars that were purple and red, making her look particularly fierce. "Master, master, you've returned." Duan-san knelt on the ground and began to wail. "I beg master to save Jiu. Please save her." Chinyu frowned. "Who did this?" Baichizi sneered. "Your Highness, your words are strange. She is my servant, so I can do whatever I want with her. Let alone ruining her face. Even if I wanted to kill her, that would still be a matter of course. Your Highness, you have an honorable status, but I'm afraid you can't manage this sort of matter. This is clearly my master's residence. You robbers!" Duan-san angrily roared. Baichizi's eyes were cold. "You disgraceful thing! Don't forget that you are still my servant. I can kill you at any time. You dare to speak in front of me." He smirked. "Of course, looking at His Highness Saint Son's face, I will leave you with your dog life." Chinyu said, "What he said is correct. This is my residence." Baichizi laughed. "Your Highness must have remembered incorrectly. If you don't believe me, you can go investigate. Half a year ago, this place was transferred to my name, including all the servants in this courtyard. I must remind your highness that the demonic path pays great attention to protecting personal property. Although you have a high status, you still need to be careful when you do things, lest others talk about you behind your back. Chinyu was silent for several breaths of time. Then he suddenly asked, "What is your name?" Bai Cheesy cupped his hands together. "I've troubled your highness to ask. I am Bai Cheesy, and I believe you will remember me. If there's a chance in the future, I welcome you as a guest." As he spoke, he cupped his hands together as if he wouldn't see Chinyu off. This time, all of his little friends were shocked. This surnamed by Bastard, when did he become so sharp? No one dared to recognize him. Saint's son, this was the saint's son. Although he was still missing a final step and the holy palace had withered away because the throne had been vacant for 100,000 years, his status was still there. It was said that even the demon attendant had bowed to him on that day. Just how honorable was that? Although they were frightened and puzzled, the respect they felt towards Bai Cheesy began to surge like a raging river. This surnamed Bai was truly arrogant. Chinyu's voice was light and light. "I don't know what you were relying on to be so arrogant in front of me, but I must congratulate you for successfully enraging me." Highlandland's heart skipped a beat. "Your Highness, don't be impulsive." Before she could finish speaking, Chinyu raised a hand and interrupted her. His eyes were as cold as arrows. "I am really curious as to what will happen after I kill him. If there really is a storm, then let's see just who is stirring up trouble in the dark." Bai Cheesy stiffened. The current situation didn't seem to match up with what his father had said. This surnamed Yao didn't seem fake at all. "My father is Blue Sky Yellow Springs Elder, the Calamity Immortal by Xin Yuan. If your highness wants to kill me, aren't you afraid of provoking a disaster?" Qin Yu suddenly smiled. "I'm not afraid." He lifted a hand and grasped. Bang! Space violently twisted. Like a great mouth, it swallowed up Bai Cheesy. Crackling sounds of bones breaking filled the ears, as if flowers were blooming all around him. Before he was swallowed up by the distorted space, the panic and despair on Bai Cheesy's face didn't escape Qin Yu's eyes. It seemed that he was only a chess piece that had been pushed out. The son of a calamity immortal wasn't light at all. From this, it could be seen that the person behind this was quite fierce. Now that he had killed him, he wanted to see just who would jump out next. Chapter 555. The group of scoundrels that had been filled with reverence and respect just a moment ago were now like quails that had been grabbed by the neck. Their eyes were round and their mouths were wide open, cold air spitting out from them. Bai Cheesy had died? He had actually died like this. Several people's minds rumbled as an icy tide of fear submerged their minds. Even Bai Cheesy, who had a calamity immortal father, had been killed like a chicken or duck, much less these random cats and dogs. Some of the more timid ones had already collapsed to the ground, their bodies twitching, and soon a foul stench filled the air. However, Qin Yu had no thoughts of moving against them. Killing Bai Cheesy was enough. Why would he want to bear the infamy of being cruel and bloodthirsty? Moreover, although he didn't want to make things difficult for these people, he expected that after today, their days wouldn't be any better. Hailanlan bit her lips. Although reason told her that Qin, you shouldn't have done this, she still felt a bit more admiration for him. It had to be known that not everyone in this world had such courage. Since things had come to this point, there was no turning back. She could only try to deal with the aftermath and minimize the effects of the storm. She took a step forwards and said in a soft voice, "Your Highness, let's go back first." Qin Yu shook his head. "Wait." Hailanlan opened her mouth. She had some understanding of Qin Yu's personality. Since he said this, she had already made up her mind. Although she was a bit restless, she didn't say anything. With Qin Yu's status as the Holy Palace's saint's son, he shouldn't be in any danger. She glanced at the true demon guards under Tutu's command. The Lord Demon Envoy should have already obtained the news. Once he arrived, everything would be fine. Hailanlan didn't know that the face of the true demon guard's little leader had already turned deathly white beneath his armor. After Qin Yu had killed Bai Cheesy, he knew that things wouldn't end peacefully. But Even though he had sent out the news many times, he hadn't received the slightest response. In the silence, Chinyu suddenly looked up. Space suddenly collapsed, and countless cracks rapidly spread outwards. Bai Xingyuan walked out, his expression dark and gloomy. His aura revolved around him, and his eyes were filled with monstrous killing intent. "Who harmed my son?" A deep roar mixed with pain resounded in all directions like rolling thunder, and a terrifying aura enveloped the entire mountain peak. Countless cultivators who were curious about what was happening in the mansion on the mountain peak, but didn't dare to approach, suddenly stiffened, and then their faces turned pale, and sweat poured down like rain. None of them were fools. With just one sentence, they understood the whole story. His Highness had actually killed Bai Cheesy. Could it be that he didn't know his identity? The people of Heaven Underworld had always been the most tyrannical. This matter was definitely going to blow up. A calamity, immortal realm cultivator flew into a rage. His incomparably powerful aura caused the rules of the world to tremble. Great waves seemed to rise up in the void, as if they wanted to crush everyone. Radiant divine light shined from Qin Yu's body. The little saint robe appeared, blocking all the pressure from the outside world. He frowned for a moment before composing himself. "I kill Bai Cheesy." Bai Xingyuan stiffened. His face that was filled with rage and killing intent suddenly flushed red. Blue veins popped up on his forehead. After several breaths of silence, he descended. "Blue Sky Yellow Springs Bai Xingyuan greets Your Highness Saint Son. May I ask what crime my child Saint Son has committed that requires you to personally punish him?" Qin Yu remained expressionless. "Bai Cheesy offended me." This was because Qin Yu was well aware that from the moment he killed Bai Cheesy, he had already fallen into a trap. No matter how much he tried to explain, it was useless. Since this was the case, he might as well directly acknowledge it. The Saint's son had an exalted status. Those that offended him had to die. Just this point alone was enough. Bai Xingyuan's lips trembled. All sorts of emotions flashed in his eyes. Surprise, anger, sorrow, sadness. But in the end, they all transformed into a deep tranquility. He suddenly reared his head back and roared. His calamity, immortal realm cultivation erupted without reservation. His voice was filled with resentment, unwillingness, bitterness, and despair. All of this was instantly felt by the entire demonic path. Cloud Cluster City, Mu family residence. As the demon envoy listened to the Mu family old ancestor slowly narrate the events of the past, his complexion suddenly changed. He stood up, an endless chill in his eyes. He would never mistake Bai Xingyuan's aura. As he thought about how Bai Xingyuan had been entangled with Yao Bin recently, a shadow appeared in his heart. The demon envoy coldly looked at the Mu family old ancestor. Without hesitation, he punched the void, breaking through the invisible imprisonment and vanishing from sight. As he felt the powerful strength that hadn't completely dissipated in space, the Mu family old ancestor frowned. He thought that this Braden Yang had hidden himself far too deeply. It seemed that many people had been deceived by him. But no matter what, he had still won today's battle. The result had already been decided. Even if Yang rushed over there, he wouldn't be able to reverse the situation. But after living for a long time, he had experienced far too many things. He understood that if the dust didn't settle, there could always be changes. The Mu family old ancestor faintly smiled. He stepped forwards and submerged into space. He wouldn't allow the key to the Mu family's comeback to be destroyed by someone else. Bang, bang, in the skies above the residence. The vault of heaven collapsed one after another. Several figures walked out, each one emitting an endless chill. Pieces of dark red icicles that looked like frozen blood spiraled down from the top of his head and formed a bloody frost on the ground. "Brother Bai, what happened?" One of them asked. There were actually two pupils in each of his eyes, making him look incomparably strange. He saw Qin Yu, who was wearing a little saint robe. His eyebrows were furrowed, and his face was a bit colder. Bai Xingyuan seemed to have lost his soul. His back was bent, and in that instant he seemed to age by thousands or even tens of thousands of years. I was reckless and ignorant and offended your highness, the saint's son. I have already been executed by your highness, the saint's son. As he spoke to her, tears streamed down his face. The demon envoy and the Mu family old ancestor arrived one after the other. This was the scene they saw. As the demon envoy heard by Xin Yuan's words, his complexion changed. He never imagined that in just a short half a day, such chaos would occur. He hurriedly stepped forwards and cupped his hands together. Room master Bai, there must be something hidden in this matter. I guarantee that I will help you clearly investigate it. As he spoke, he glared at the Mu family old ancestor, his eyes filled with hatred. The person with the double pupils sneered. The facts are in front of us. I wonder what the demon envoy plans to investigate. He slowly looked up, his voice thick and cold. I have long heard of your highness, the saint's son's reputation. Now that I have seen you today, you truly are no trifling matter. Your dignity and killing intent are extremely heavy. But I wonder what sort of great crime my nephew committed that he would deserve to die. Bai Xin Yuan lifted a hand. Brother Yuan, do not be rude to the saint's son. His highness has a noble status, and my son truly did deserve to die. During these past years, I have neglected to teach him, allowing this evil beast to run rampant more and more, resulting in today's great calamity. All of this is my Bai family's fault. We cannot blame his highness, the saint's son. He took a deep breath. Your highness, my son has already confessed to his crimes and died. I ask that you return his corpse. In the end, we are still father and son. I hope that you can allow him to rest in peace. Hai Lan Lan stiffened. Bai Xin Yuan was a reasonable person, but Bai Chi's son had already turned to powder. Where would they go to find his corpse? This was bad, this was bad, this was going to be troublesome. As he saw everyone's complexions change, Bai Xin Yuan's body swayed. Your highness, you didn't even leave a complete corpse for your unfilial son? Just what sort of great crime did he commit that he would need to atone for his crimes in such a manner? Yuan Songsheng was enraged. His eyes shined with a faint blue light. This blue light was completely devoid of life, like the skin of a dead person. What a good holy palace, saint's son. I've truly experienced something today. But my blue sky yellow springs has its own system of inheritances, and it is not absolutely subordinate to your holy palace. If your highness cannot give an explanation for today's events, then don't blame us for being rude. We have cultivated with all our might and gone through countless trials and tribulations. We have wandered between life and death in order to obtain our current cultivation. If we cannot even protect our children, then what is the use of our cultivation? Although your highness of the holy palace has an exalted status, you must still give us an explanation for killing the only son of my blue sky yellow springs tribulation immortals. Several blue sky yellow springs tribulation immortals spoke, their words overflowing with cold energy. Their killing intent rose into the air, making one feel as if a boulder was pressing down on their chests. It was clear that what happened to Bai Xin Yuan had left them thoroughly enraged. The demon envoy paled. It was clear that today's events had been deliberately planned by someone. The Mu family's invitation, as well as these several blue sky yellow springs tribulation immortals who had arrived so quickly, were clearly all part of the plot. There was no evidence at all. If he spoke of this, he feared that it would only make the people of blue sky yellow springs even angrier. But if he didn't think of a way to contain it, then the situation would soon spiral out of control. Blue sky yellow springs, dark night demon region, and the holy palace formed the entire demonic path. Although the holy palace held supreme authority in name, the truth was that these three sides didn't belong to any of them. They had only joined forces to contend with the immortal sect. If blue sky yellow springs developed enmity with the holy palace because of this, then even if Qin Yu was the holy son, he feared he wouldn't be able to shoulder the responsibility. Damn it! The more the demon envoy thought about it, the more he became alarmed and angry. Even though he knew that there was nothing he could do, he still couldn't help but blame Qin Yu. Now that he had become the holy son, he should be more cautious with his every move. No matter what the reason was, why did he have to kill someone in anger? Moreover, the one he killed was the son of a blue sky, yellow springs tribulation immortal. Just how was he supposed to clean up this mess? Beneath the skies above the mountain peak, great figures of the demonic path arrived one after another. After learning what had happened, they couldn't help but frown. As their eyes fell on Chinyu, they revealed a bit of dissatisfaction. The Holy Palace had always had a better relationship with Blue Sky Yellow Springs than with the Dark Night Demon region. For the last 100,000 years, the position of Holy Monarch had been vacant. The Dark Night Demon region had tried more than once to temporarily take control of the demonic path, but they had given up because of Blue Sky Yellow Springs' attitude. If they angered Blue Sky Yellow Springs and they joined forces with the Dark Night Demon region, then the situation would likely be far from good. Although the Holy Palace ruled the demonic path in name, there were still too many benefits involved. Otherwise, why would the Dark Night Demon region have tried to obtain it so many times? If they lost it, it would harm the interests of everyone in the Holy Palace. Xinyu frowned. His eyes fell on by Xinyun, who was trembling in pain. A strange feeling rose in his heart. This house master had performed very well. He hadn't lost his reason because of the death of his only son, but it was because of his performance that the situation was spiraling out of control. Was this a coincidence, or was it deliberate? He originally thought that Bai Chizi was an abandoned chess piece, and that even Bai Xin Yuan had been included in the scheme. But now, he felt like he was looking at flowers in a fog, and the situation had become blurry. Qin, you could clearly feel the demon attendant's anxiety and hidden dissatisfaction, as well as the cold gazes of the people that had arrived. But he didn't panic. Since he had decided to enter the game, this was only the beginning. How could he panic now? Housemaster Bai, I don't regret killing your son. He violated the rules of the Holy Palace and offended me, so he deserved to be beheaded. Everyone, if you join forces to hold him accountable today, are you trying to tell the entire demonic path that the son of a calamity transcender is not guilty just because he violated the law? Chinyu slowly spoke, his tone calm and indifferent. Disregarding how calm he was, many people were secretly startled. After they heard his words, they felt their scalps tingle. They thought that this holy son, His Highness, had a fierce counterattack. Bai Xinyuan froze, and his face paled even further. He sadly said, "What the Holy Son says is correct. He is an unfilial son and deserves to die 1,000 times over. Moreover, your Highness has a high status, so there is no need for you to be criticized by us. Whatever you want to do, you have your own rules." He bowed deeply. "Good friends, I appreciate your good intentions, but I no longer wish to pursue this matter. Let this matter end here." As he finished speaking, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fell backwards. Brother Bai, Yuan Song Shang caught hold of him. Seeing his good friend of many years not only die, but his heart was also filled with depression, he couldn't help but feel his hair stand on end. He no longer had any scruples. Fellow Taoists, the cultivators of Blue Sky's Yellow Springs, have always believed that we have maintained a harmonious relationship with the Holy Palace for many years. But I never imagined that people like us would be completely disregarded by Your Highness, the Holy Sun. Today, Housemaster Bai was killed, and tomorrow it might be our turn. If there is no explanation for this matter, do you think we can stop here? We cannot. Bang! A terrifying chill suddenly erupted. The eyes of the 7 Blue Skies Yellow Springs Calamity Immortals began to fill with a cruel, killing intent. Brother Yuan, please don't, for a single unfilial son. There is no need to go this far. Bai Xinyuan's face was full of worry. He struggled to stand up, wanting to stop the crowd. Yuan Songsheng had no expression. Brother Bai, it's fine as long as you feel at ease. Today, even if we have to pierce through the heavens, we will make sure that Your Highness, the Holy Sun, understands that no matter how exalted he is, human lives cannot be disregarded. The demon envoy clenched his teeth and roared, "Fellow Taoist Yuan, have you all thought this through?" When the demonic path was established, the three factions recognized the supreme status of the Holy Palace. The Holy Monarch and the Holy Sun cannot be offended. If any of you dare to harm the Holy Sun in the slightest, your crimes will be punished with death. Even if he complained in his heart, he wouldn't allow anyone to harm Chinyu. This was his bottom line. The calamity immortals of the Holy Palace all paled. Although they were dissatisfied with Chinyu's actions, as long as he was the Holy Sun, they couldn't stand idly by. Thus, on the summit of the mountain, a terrifying aura suddenly appeared. Now, as long as a single spark leapt out, it would set a prairie ablaze and cause the situation to spiral out of control. All the cultivators on the mountain trembled, their faces pale and their eyes filled with fear. If a great battle were to erupt, they feared that in the blink of an eye, they would be crushed to pieces by a terrifying strength. Even if they wanted to escape, it was already too late. Space had been completely frozen over, and the rules had wove together to form a massive net. Where could they possibly escape to? Everything fell silent, with not a single sound to be heard. Yuan Tsongsheng's eyes twitched as he struggled with his thoughts. Once today's events erupted, he feared that the demonic path would fall into chaos. He had no choice but to consider the consequences. But if he stopped here, wouldn't the entire Blue Sky Yellow Springs be thoroughly shamed because of today's events? A cruel light flashed in his eyes. At this time, Chinyu suddenly said, killing Bai Chi Zi was his own fault. But I didn't leave his corpse intact in order to maintain our relationship as father and son. That was indeed my lack of consideration. He looked up. Room Master Bai, I'm willing to give you an explanation. It's not that I killed without reason, but because I don't want this matter to cause discord between the Holy Palace and Blue Sky Yellow Springs. What do you want in order to satisfy me? Please speak. Yuan Tsongsheng let out a long breath of relief. Although he didn't fear falling out with the Holy Palace, it would be best if both sides could step down from the stage with dignity. He had heard that Bai Xen Yuan's son was indeed an ignorant and incompetent man who stirred up trouble. There must be a reason why he was killed by Yao Bin today. Unknowingly, his attitude towards Qin Yu had changed a bit. This was called psychological reversal. Sensing the change in the auras of everyone around him, Bai Xen Yuan sighed inwardly. But he knew that there was nothing he could do, and he couldn't continue to retreat in order to advance. Otherwise, he would be discovered. He let out a breath and stood up. He first bowed to Yuan Tsongsheng and the others before saying, Your Highness Saint's son, no matter how many wrongs my unfilial son committed, he was still someone I doted on since he was a child. Our relationship as father and son is deep. If I say that I don't have any resentment in my heart today, I would only be deceiving myself. He turned around and wryly smiled. Brother Yuan, yesterday I gave you a pill. I wonder if you can return it to me? Yuan Tsongsheng nodded. He flipped his hand and took out a jade bottle. Bai Xen Yuan nodded in thanks. Everyone knows that I don't like worldly things, and I don't hold any official position. The only thing I'm interested in is the writing that has been passed down from ancient times. The pill in this jade bottle is a kind of poison that I inadvertently refined according to an incomplete ancient recipe. I don't know how strong this poison is, but if the saint's son is willing to take it, then the matter of my unfilial son will be written off. Yuan Tsongsheng already had some doubts in his heart. He was startled for a moment and then revealed a bit of shame in his eyes. He looked at Bai Xen Yuan, who was forcefully suppressing his sorrow, and secretly cursed himself for having the heart of a petty person. The poison pill in the jade bottle was indeed refined from an incomplete ancient recipe. But several people had already tested it yesterday. The powder they scraped off only caused a monster beast to wither for a moment before it quickly recovered. Because of this, Bai Xen Yuan had been ridiculed by several people. He had wasted precious materials to refine such a waste. But because Yuan Tsongsheng's cultivation system was different from that of others, he needed to borrow the support of various ancient treasures. This was why he was interested in this pill and asked for it from Bai Xen Yuan. With Yao Bin's cultivation, swallowing such a poison wouldn't be a problem at all. Bai Xian Yuan wanted to use this method to force both sides to step down from the stage so that things wouldn't get out of hand, but this was far too bitter for him. Yuan Tsongsheng and the others all revealed looks of pity. The demon envoy also let out a long breath of relief. He already knew what happened in the Endless Sea. Although he didn't know what method Qin Yu had that allowed him to resist the corrosion of pill poison, if he didn't even fear the terrifying pill poison of the demon body tempering pill, then this little poison pill was nothing at all. He swept his eyes over by Xian Yuan and the others. Seeing the pity and admiration on their faces, the demon envoy's heart also calmed down. He had the same thoughts as the others. Although Bai Xian Yuan gave birth to a bastard son, he was still able to consider the overall situation. After today, he would have to find a chance to compensate him. Bai Xian Yuan's residence wasn't too far away from the Great Study. There was an underground palace built beneath the temple. This was where he usually cultivated. There were several sealed stone chambers where monster beasts were raised to test medicines. At this time, in one of the stone chambers, there was a loud, thumping sound. The black iron door violently trembled, and small cracks constantly appeared on its surface. What was locked inside was a gentle and docile flag goat. This type of monster beast was similar to humans in terms of medicinal properties and was a common monster beast used to test medicines. But now, this flag goat's body had grown several times over. Its originally pure white fur was dyed a terrifying dark red color by the beads of blood that seeped out from the cracks on its body. Two small crescent moon-shaped horns were like crazy branches, with countless sharp spikes drilled out from them. It crazily howled as it smashed into the stone chamber, erupting with a terrifying destructive power. If it weren't for the fact that the stone chamber was connected to the underground palace's protective array formation, it likely would have already rushed out. Suddenly, the flag goat emitted a pained howl, and its massive body directly exploded. Bits and pieces of flesh and blood instantly covered the entire stone chamber, causing the underground palace to tremble. No one knew what was happening in Bai Xian Yuan's underground palace, and no one knew that the flag goat that blew itself up was the same one used to test the poison yesterday. Qin Yu deeply looked at Bai Xian Yuan. He lifted a hand and took out a jade bottle. All right, I agree. He opened the jade bottle, and a scarlet pill tumbled out. The smell wasn't pungent at all. Rather, it emitted a light fragrance. Without any hesitation, Qin Yu swallowed the pill. He closed his eyes, as if sensing the power of this poison. The demon envoy's eyebrows darkened. If anything went wrong, he would immediately take action. Bai Xian Yuan's eyes drooped. His face was still pale, and he let out a light breath. Although he hadn't completely achieved his goal of having the Holy Palace and Blue Sky Yellow Springs turn against each other, as long as Yao Bin swallowed the pill, his main goal would have been achieved. His eyes were dazed for a moment. He faintly recalled that boy that followed behind him in the past, that boy that happily called him father. Humans weren't plants or trees. How could father and son not have any affection for each other for hundreds of years? It was just that, by cheesy, from the day you were named, your fate was already decided. In this life, I have failed you. I hope that you can find an ordinary family in your next life and enjoy a life of peace and stability. Qin Yu opened his eyes. He faintly smiled. I thank Room Master Bai for the generous gift. Origin compliance, Saint coldly snorted. He felt that this smile was a bit harsh to the eyes. Since he had already taken advantage of Qin Yu, there was no need to show it. Brother White, let's go. Bai Xian Yuan suddenly regained his composure. He nodded and turned to leave. He really had to leave, otherwise it would be too late. The demon envoy let out a long breath. Although it wasn't perfect, he had still resolved this matter. He looked at the Mu family old ancestor. This old thing was like a statue made of mud, his eyes drooping and his face expressionless. Humph! I will get my revenge for this debt sooner or later. Hold on, Qin Yu suddenly said, his eyes indifferent. Room Master Bai, are you going to leave like this? Do you not want to personally see me die from poison? Bai Xian Yuan trembled. He turned and said with difficulty, Your Highness, why must you do this? Can't you just let this matter pass? Origin compliance, Saint roared out. Yao Bin, don't go too far. Qin Yu's eyes turned even colder. Senior Yuan, there are some things that cannot be explained clearly. Perhaps you should wait a bit longer. Bai Xian Yuan sighed inwardly. He didn't know where the problem was, but it was clear that he had already been exposed, and it was impossible for him to leave unscathed. In the blink of an eye, he made his decision. Since he couldn't leave, he would display his greatest value. Ha ha, Your Highness. Oh, Your Highness, my only son was killed by you. I took a slightly poisonous pill and am willing to use my own sorrow and suffering to exchange for the peace of the demonic path. Why do you insist on forcing me into a hopeless situation? Could it be that no one in the demonic path can disobey you? Bai Xian Yuan's long hair fluttered in the wind. Yao Bin, if you weren't the saint's son, I would have turned your bones to ashes and buried you with my son. But I cannot do anything. Ah, damned heavens. Why are you treating me like this? Why? Bang! A wild aura erupted from his body like a volcano. Yuan compliant saint was shocked. Brother White, don't. But before he could approach, he was forced back by the terrifying aura. The demon envoy's body shook, and his complexion paled. His eyes were filled with anger. How could Bai Xian Yuan be so unyielding? At this moment, he really couldn't help but have an opinion of Qin Yu. Things had clearly calmed down, so why was there a need to argue and force a Blue Skies, Yellow Springs calamity immortal to commit suicide? If so, things would surely spiral out of control. Shwa, shwa, several calamity immortals attacked at the same time, sealing off space. If Bai Xian Yuan was allowed to self-detonate and sweep through the surrounding 10,000 miles, everything would be turned to dust. Everyone looked at Qin Yu, the disappointment and coldness in their eyes piercing straight to their bones. This child was not worth scheming against. No one discovered that as Qin Yu lowered his head, his eyes suddenly brightened. He lifted a hand and grasped forwards. In that instant, an aura arrived, causing the souls of everyone present to shiver. Bai Xinyuan's body stiffened, and he lost control of his body. The wild aura within his body slowly dissipated. Qin Yu looked straight into his eyes and slowly said, "To use a tribulation transcender avatar as the price to frame me, I am truly honored." Space was deathly still. What did this mean? Bai Xian Yuan furrowed his eyebrows. He lowered his head and thought for a long time. Then, he suddenly said, "You are truly worthy of your Highness, Saint Son. Now, I'm truly curious as to how you did it." As his voice spread out, everyone, including the demon envoy, felt their hearts turn cold. Disbelief filled their eyes. Bai Xian Yuan, how was this possible? Qin Yu flicked his sleeves. Above Bai Xian Yuan's head, a soul phantom appeared. However, only half of this soul was solid. The other half was ethereal. No wonder an avatar was able to become a calamity immortal. You actually sent half of your soul here. What a great move. But I wonder if destroying this half of your soul will be enough to kill you? Or perhaps I can imprison this half of your soul and interrogate you. You should know that I can do this. Bai Xian Yuan shook his head and sighed. He said, "I spent over 1,000 years preparing this, but in the end I didn't obtain anything. Your Highness Saint Son is truly unexpected. I am filled with admiration." His lips curved up in a smile. "I believe your Highness already knows what you swallowed just now. I'm also curious as to why you didn't fear the demonic shattering miasma." "Broken wand," the demon envoy cried out. Bai Xinyuan laughed heartily. "That's right. It's the demon dispelling miasma that killed the previous holy sage. Demon envoy, do you want to know where this extinct poison came from?" His eyes fell on the Mu family old ancestor, and his lips curled up in a mocking smile. "Insolence!" With a loud shout, the Mu family old ancestor lifted a hand and pressed down. Space collapsed, swallowing up Bai Xian Yuan like a giant mouth. "Ah, Mr. Mu, why are you in such a hurry? I didn't say that you provided the poison, but the truth is that it was you. Haha, your Highness Saint Son, Let us meet again in the future. Bang! The world trembled and collapsed. Space violently shook, and by Xing Yuan's aura vanished from sight. The Mu family old ancestors' face darkened. How can the words of a spy be trusted? If we don't kill him in time, and he randomly accuses us, everyone will be in danger. That bastard thing. Even before he dies, he still wants to slander me. How hateful! The demon envoy coldly said, Mr. Mu, you attacked too quickly. He didn't say much, but everyone knew what was true and what was false. Everyone was silent, their eyes dark and gloomy. The Mu family old ancestor took a deep breath. I do things in an open and honest manner. I don't fear spies framing me. With a flick of his sleeves, he turned and left. The anger in his chest nearly tore apart his heart and lungs. He was well aware that after today, the Mu family would no longer have any help in the demonic path. ######, everyone. Happy National Day. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.